Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back. Tonight, we're going to be taking quite the trip down a rabbit hole that I got stuck in 1989. And for some strange reason, I'm still kind of stuck in that rabbit hole, which for me began in 1989, for others, perhaps earlier than that. And tonight we'll be really delving deeply into the history of alien stories that are connected directly to Area 51. After all, my friends, what better backdrop to a story about aliens can you possibly have than what is perhaps the most secret place on Earth in the form of Area 51? Now, of course, officially, and that would be officially, the United States government maintains that Area 51 exists for testing purposes. And along with all of the stories of alien lore and mythology, we'll also be exploring the real history of Area 51, why it was created, what it was for, what they did there, what they acknowledge and admit that they have developed there. For example, spy plane technology, stealth technology, all tested and developed at Area 51, which has been called, again, the most secret place on Earth. I always found it very convenient that people would attach their stories of aliens to a place that is so shrouded in mystery. Up until very recently, you couldn't even look at satellite images. Of course, before the internet, that would be extremely difficult. A few satellite images purportedly that came from Russian satellites sort of made the rounds on the early internet or pre-internet, even as I recall. But people would attach their stories about alien technology to Area 51. And to me, it's somewhat convenient because it becomes a problem of falsifiability. And what do I mean by that? Well, most of these people that are actively promoting, and let's be clear, all of them also profiting from these stories, all of them never actually prove with real or verifiable evidence that their stories are indeed true. But I'm left in a situation where I can't prove, in some cases, I think we can prove that their stories are fake. But again, back to the concept of falsifiability, if their information can neither be proven true or false, it has no value. We're just stuck at an impasse. And that seems to be the way that most of these stories have worked. We're going to take a moment to welcome in the live chat, and we'll begin our presentation. But before we do, I want to make sure that I acknowledge and make sure everyone understands that there is a lack of any moderation on our channel. And I talked about, we've just removed all of the mods. People were doing things I didn't agree with, including hiding users, muting users, deleting users, blocking users, banning users, whatever. And we do not support that. We don't have an echo chamber here. So if you're one of those people that were affected, I apologize. I did not give my knowledge or, consent or direct anybody to mute, whatever, ban people. And this applies both to our Discord and to our live chat. So welcome all of our live chatters, whether you're chatting on Rumble or on Twitch or on the Twitter live feed or the Facebook live feed or here in our YouTube channel or on pill.net. Welcome all live chatters, one and all. So we'll begin our exploration of Area 51 and aliens tonight with a bit of a history lesson. Area 51, after all, is a highly secretive and classified U.S. military facility that is located in the Nevada desert. and it has been shrouded in mystery for decades. Tonight, we'll be delving into the history and origins of Area 51. We'll be discussing its pivotal role in developing classified weapons and surveillance platforms, including the U-2 spy plane and the SR-71 Blackbird, as well as stealth technology. We'll also be examining several of the stories and the storytellers that attached their alien and alien technology stories directly to Area 51. So if you're here for the alien stories, you're going to get them. Tonight, we'll be including claims of alien spacecraft, alien bodies, and alleged back engineering programs taking place at Area 51. We'll be focusing on the controversial claims made by Bob Lazar and others. And throughout tonight's exploration, we'll distinguish between documented historical real programs and unproven conspiracy theories. Area 51 is also known as Groom Lake, or the Nevada Test and Training Range, has long been the subject of intrigue, speculation, mystery, and conspiracy theories. This top-secret military base, operated by the Air Force, has played a crucial role in the development of classified aircraft, surveillance technologies, and experimental programs. We will aim tonight to separate fact from fiction and shed some light on the historical and well-documented aspects of Area 51, while examining the many unproven claims and conspiracy theories regarding aliens, alien technology that surround the Area 51 base. The real origins of Area 51 trace back to the early 1950s. And at this time, it was right after World War II, and the Cold War was, I don't want to say heating up, the Cold War was becoming a real issue. And the United States government sought a remote and secure location for the development and testing of experimental aircraft. Of course, much of this experimental aircraft would center around spy planes. The United States government was desperate for intelligence gathering against the then Soviet Union. The Area 51 site itself, situated approximately 80 miles northwest of Las Vegas, was chosen for its isolation and limited public access. Construction of the facilities there began in 1955, leading to the establishment of the facility now known as Area 51. One of the most significant programs developed there was the U-2 spy plane, and of course, my favorite airplane of all time, the SR-71 Blackbird. One of Area 51's most significant contributions to military technology, after all, was its role in the development of these high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft. The U-2, developed in the 1950s, provided critical intelligence gathering during the Cold War. Subsequently, the SR-71 Blackbird, known for its speed and altitude capabilities, was also tested and operated out of Area 51. These aircraft played a pivotal role in intelligence gathering and national security. Then, of course, Area 51 is also very famous for the development of stealth technologies. Area 51, after all, was instrumental in the development of stealth technologies, with the first experimental stealth aircraft, the Lockheed Have Blue, which was being tested there in the late 1970s. This paved the way for the F-117 Nighthawk and other stealth aircraft like the stealth bomber, which significantly enhanced the capabilities of the United States military. Then, of course, there are the various claims of alien spacecraft. And to me, one of the most enduring and popular conspiracy theories surrounding Area 51 is the belief by many that it houses extraterrestrial spacecraft. However, no concrete evidence has emerged to support these claims, and the U.S. government has maintained that Area 51 is used for military testing and development, not extraterrestrial technology. One of the most sensational claims are the claims of alien bodies being stored somewhere on Area 51. So some conspiracy theories go further, suggesting that not only alien spacecraft are housed at Area 51, but also alien bodies that have been discovered at various alien spacecraft or UFO crash sites, taken to and then studied at Area 51. And despite numerous claims and stories, many of which we'll be reviewing tonight, there is no verifiable evidence to support such allegations. Bob Lazar is alleged to be a former employee at Area 51 who claimed that he claimed that he had been involved in a special project aimed at reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology. And among all the people who have pushed stories about aliens in Area 51, Bob Lazar is perhaps the most famous. His accounts have been met with skepticism and controversy, as well as an awful lot of profit. And you may be aware that the story came back. The story originated in 1989, but it got repackaged and resold again recently by one Jeremy Corbell. However, after more than 30 years, there is still no conclusive evidence that substantiates his claims. And actually, there is a great deal more evidence that Bob Lazar was a fraud and a profit-driven liar. There's a great deal of controversy surrounding Bob Lazar. And the controversy really centers on his claimed background. After all, Bob Lazar claimed to be a real scientist, a physicist, but he could show no scientific degrees. And in fact, many believe, including this researcher, that he indeed 100% lied about his entire educational background. So the verifiability of his employment at Area 51 has never been established, and there are multiple inconsistencies in his accounts, despite people claiming that he hasn't changed his story for 30 years. And while his story remains highly profitable to some and widely circulated, it has not been definitively proven, and I don't believe that it ever will be. So just to review, we have, of course, a history, a known and verifiable and real and credible history of real programs at Area 51, such as the development of the U-2 spy plane and SR-71 aircraft. And this real history of Area 51 is well documented and even acknowledged by the United States government. And of course, the testing and development of stealth technologies at Area 51 are known and substantiated and admitted to by the United States government. So the other category, of course, would be the conspiracy theories, the claims of alien spacecraft and bodies at Area 51, but they lack credible evidence. We have many people telling similar stories to Bob Lazar's, and we'll delve deeply into those stories this evening. So Area 51 has long been the focus of intrigue, fascination, and speculation for decades. And while the base's real historical role in developing classified aircraft and surveillance technologies is well documented, conspiracy theories, including extraterrestrial claims and the controversial assertions of individuals like Bob Lazar, continue to captivate the public's imagination. I believe that it is incredibly important to critically examine these claims and distinguish between real and documented history of Area 51 and unproven allegations, maintaining a healthy skepticism regarding extraordinary claims until real and verifiable and credible evidence actually emerges. Area 51 remains a mysterious, enigmatic symbol of secrecy, innovation, and the enduring allure of the unknown. So we will begin. We're going to go to the aliens now. We're going to get to the alien stories, which I have followed each of these stories that we're going to talk about tonight in some detail since 1989. And I will try to explain. So these are what I call Area 51 and S4 myth makers. These are the people that have popularized the ideas that there are real and aliens and real alien spacecraft at Area 51. So John Lear was actually the first person to popularize. He not only popularized the idea of aliens at Area 51, but he publicized and popularized the earliest conspiracy theories surrounding aliens and flying saucers and alien spacecraft being housed at Area 51. And John Lear is an interesting character because, like many people who get into UFOs, he had an impressive background and real credentials. He really did fly secret missions for the United States government. He was an incredibly well accomplished pilot who came from this Lear pedigree. You may have heard of the Lear jet. That was an invention of John Lear's father. John Lear's father invented many things, actually, including, I'm told, the 8-track tape system. So he held many patents and was incredibly wealthy. John Lear had a perceived credibility about him. And especially early, John Lear came across as incredibly believable and credible. And I'm going to share with you an early interview of George Knapp and John Lear. And George Knapp, of course, would be the next person on our list who really did help to popularize the mysteries and conspiracy theories surrounding Area 51, especially when it comes to aliens at Area 51. And one second, we are going to be, I'm going to get that for you. Yeah, so I have a video, and I have just mirrored these. You can find it on News 8. News 8's YouTube channel still has these old George Knapp early interviews about UFOs and aliens. And I'm glad that they're still existing and you can still use those as a resource. It's only through the lens of history that we really get the best look at what's really happening here. So this is an early interview with John Lear. George Knapp had this Sunday talk show, and he hit the gold mine with aliens. George Knapp himself, I've heard him in an interview talk about getting huge ratings when he had John Lear on to talk about UFOs. So then he became sort of all chips in on the UFO stuff. This is where George Knapp began with his coverage of UFOs. And John Lear, interestingly, came to George Knapp before Bob Lazar, but these guys were all friends. That's something that's very important to point out. And interestingly, John Lear would make very, very incredibly similar claims about flying saucers being housed at Area 51 and being back engineered and studied before Bob Lazar came out with his story. So is it a coincidence that these guys were all friends and Bob Lazar just happened to work at the very base that John Lear is going to describe in this interview before Bob Lazar was known and became public? It's a bridge too far for me, but let's get into it, friends. Oh, and let me
think maybe
one second here. Let me I'm going to need to put my fair use banner up. This is a transformative work. We're educating the public, and we'll be critiquing and discussing the video that we will be sharing. This is the briefest one I have for this presentation.
Think maybe it's a top secret area. If the Air Force actually does have them, maybe they got him here.
I'm certain they do. Up at the test site, there's a report that of the 3 that they got in perfectly good condition, at least 1 is up at the test site and has flown.
So interestingly, Bob Lazar is sort of, if you could imagine, maybe it was sort of some upsmanship, because this interview took place, I think, a year before Bob Lazar came out with his allegations. and whole story. And here, John Lear is describing that at Area 51, they have 3 intact alien spacecraft flying saucers. And at least one of them is being test flown. And, I guess they kind of figured it out. And then along comes Bob Lazar a year later and says, oh, no, there's not 3 flying saucers there. There's 9 of them. I just think it's interesting that this is John Lear's interview a year before Bob Lazar was interviewed by George Knapp. And is Bob Lazar sort of just jumping in here and expanding the original story as we see it as a seed here in its infancy? Maybe.
And one was being flown as of 1981.
By us.
By us, yeah.
We mentioned at the top of the show that perhaps a breakthrough might be coming. That some of these people from
This gets
MJ12
interesting.
or from the Project Blue Book who are in on the...
So remember, this is like 1988. This interview took place. Now imagine what he's going to say about whistleblowers coming forward and how we're finally going to get disclosure and the truth about disclosure. And remember that this is 1988, and it sounds strikingly similar to all the stuff that the Disclosure Boner crew are always saying now. And again, this is why it's important to view these things through the long lens of history.
The government's research, and we saw some of the stuff, might be ready to talk. We got about a minute left. Why don't you tell me about that?
It's our information that part of MJ12 wants to release it, part of it doesn't. We're hoping that we can do this, but of course, as researchers, we're not aware of all the ramifications. We just know of what we're looking at. So we would like to see them release it, but we really don't know if they are.
And of course, for those unaware, MJ12 is the mythical organization that is tasked with keeping the UFO and alien secrets from the general public. It has long been the mythology and accepted mythology by many very interested in UFOs, but there is some documents that are pretty shady, and people have argued for decades whether those MJ12 documents are real or fake, or partly real, partly fake. MJ12 was apparently a group of scientists, high-ranking government officials, intelligence people, etc., and the 12 of them would keep the secret of the alien contact on Earth from everyone else. Of course, they'd run around and grab anything, any alien technology they could and study it. And John Lear here is saying that, some members of MJ12 are going to spill the secrets. So yeah, those high-ranking people that know all the secrets about the aliens, they're going to come forward and spill the secrets. Sound familiar?
Okay, John Lear, it's been very interesting. You keep us posted.
Sure will.
Thank you. We'll see you next week with more of On the Record.
Really interesting bit of history there. And I, for one, am glad when I see that some things like this are still available. So we're going to go back to my graphic here. So again, Area 51 and S4 myth makers. John Lear was the originator of some of these stories, and George Knapp, of course, helped to popularize these ideas by interviewing John Lear several times. And then, of course, George Knapp hit the gold mine and rose to international fame and fortune with a man named Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar claimed to be, of course, a nuclear physicist who was hired to work at the very place that John Lear described a year before, and who he happened to be friends with. And there he apparently or allegedly back engineered or worked on back engineering alien spacecraft. There's a lot of problems with Bob Lazar, and we will get into those problems. But I have an early interview of Bob Lazar, and that will be a great way actually to sort of display some of the huge red flags and problems with Bob Lazar's story. Also, I've recently been in touch with Michael Schratt, shout out to Michael Schratt, and he has an excellent resource on Bob Lazar called the Bob Lazar Report. It's over 50 pages of proof that Bob Lazar is full of it. Yeah, but we'll get into that after the video here that I have to share. This one is quite a bit longer, and I'm going to keep my fair use banner up. I'll be commentating over the next piece in order to help make it a transformative work, and get your chat comments ready. I'll be sharing some of those on the screen. You too can help make this a transformative work. This is fair use. We'll be using this video to educate the public. We'll be discussing and critiquing it. This is fair use. And this, of course, is an early news report by George Knapp about Bob Lazar.
This week in our series of reports on UFOs, we've learned a number of things. That not everybody who sees a UFO is crazy, that our government has lied about UFO information, that it's withheld UFO files, and even spied on UFO witnesses.
And again, this is 1989, I believe, maybe 1990. So interesting how little has changed.
We've also heard from scientists who say life elsewhere in the universe is virtually a certainty. And we heard that a majority of Americans believe that UFOs are real and come from space. Tonight, in part 5 of his report, George Knapp introduces us to a local man with an amazing and disturbing story. George.
Gary and Mary Ruth, we've been working on this story for a long time, and we'll tell you right up front that it's going to be hard to swallow at first. This week, we've heard the contention of UFO researchers that there's a secret government within our government.
Yeah, and that would be the MJ-12, the secrets of the UFO and alien pieces. By the way, I just saw a huge super chat, I think. I want to thank you. And as soon as we're done with the video, I'll get to the super chats. For those unaware, we read every single super chat. We thank every supporter. So thankful for your support.
While that may be hard to believe coming from the UFO perspective, we've certainly learned in Watergate and the Iran-Contra scandal that factions within our government can and do pursue their own hidden agendas.
Yeah, and this is one of the ways that a conspiracy theory works. Of course, people are going to be more willing to believe that the government is lying to us about aliens and spaceships and UFOs because they have the United States government has provably lied to its own people many, many times. Just off the top of my head, the Gulf of Tonkin, the Iran-Contra scandal, the Edward Snowden revelations. Hey, we're just going to mass surveil everybody in the whole country and not tell anybody. And of course, weapons of mass destruction. Hey, let's just start endless wars in the Middle East based on a lie. So these conspiracy theories, they're believable because, yeah, of course, the United States government lies to us constantly.
Outside of the law, outside the control of Congress, or the knowledge of the American people. This is exactly the type of operation we'll hear about tonight. It's a chilling scenario with worldwide implications that may have its roots right here.
Secret faction.
Area 51, that mysterious corner of the Nevada test site, is no longer much of a secret. The fact that secretive things go on here is a given, even to the Soviets, who make daily spy flights over the facility to take a peek at what's going on.
Luis.
These
We'll get
photos,
into that.
never before shown in public, are about as close as anyone will ever come to seeing what the place looks like again. The dry bed of Groom Lake, corrugated metal buildings, a 3-mile-long runway, and some highly sophisticated radar and detection equipment. It's been known by many names over the years: Dreamland, the Ranch, the Skunk Works. If ever there was a place to test a secret new technology, this is it. And that's exactly what's been done here for decades. Area 51 is where Francis Gehry...
Yeah, and by the way, George Knapp actually did a decent job of covering the real and true history of Area 51, but then he mixed in the aliens and a convicted pimp, fake scientists, with some alien stories. And let's be clear, Bob Lazar is a convicted pimp, fake scientist imposter with a fake education, making these claims. So in order to make this work, yeah, you build it on a foundation of truth. A lot of the things that George Knapp is reporting on here, it's, so far as Area 51 history, is dead on. Just as we described in the beginning of tonight's broadcast, Area 51 was used to develop weapons platforms, surveillance platforms, and weapons technology.
powers and the other U-2 pilots were trained in the 50s, and where the U-2 itself was developed. The SR-71 spy planes that spotted Soviet missiles in Cuba in the early 60s were also developed at 51. 51 is where stealth technology was nurtured, where Star Wars devices are still tested, and where all manner of CIA monkey business has been plotted and refined. It's the perfect place for secret things.
I just wanted to mention, the CIA had a heavy role in Area 51 as well, because the CIA is largely was the driving force behind the surveillance platforms. They wanted desperately to have surveillance technology and capabilities against the then Soviet Union. They wanted to know what their nuclear capabilities were, what their military assets were like, and so the CIA was heavily involved in Area 51 and the projects there.
But of course, that's no secret. 51 is ringed by the forbidden vastness of the Nevada test site, by the looming Groom Mountains, and by sparsely populated desert expanses. The few people who do live out here have no love lost for the military, but they're conservative, patriotic, and they mind their own business.
Yeah, and it's interesting too that some of the area comprising Area 51 was like nuclear test zone. So there's some areas of the base that are incredibly toxic and still radioactive. In fact, you have to wear special badges called a dose meter, which will let you know how high a dosage of radiation that you are getting. And we'll share more on that later.
You ever see stuff you can't explain?
Sure, lots of stuff.
Care to elaborate?
No.
And this is the famous Alien, of course, right?
On any given night at the Rachel Bar and Grill, you might find 3 or 4 people who...
Oh, sorry, Rachel Bar and Grill. I always get that and the place in Roswell mixed up, so I apologize.
Work at Area 51. There, amid the flowing Budweisers and cowboy hats. You might find them, but they aren't going to talk to you. Not about the things they've seen over the mountains. A steady trickle of curiosity seekers flows through here. Strangers drawn by strange stories of lights in the night sky. Their questions also go unanswered. No one who's worked at Dreamland has ever publicly acknowledged what so many people have suspected for years.
And I found this to be incredibly convenient. You know, what a great setup for Bob Lazar's story. No one who worked at Area 51 has ever talked about the aliens, but we have the exclusive interview with our fake scientist pimp who was bankrupt at the time and married to a convicted murderer, so he could never have stepped foot on Area 51 at the height of the Cold War. But don't let things like facts and evidence get in the way of a great story you can tell. And more importantly, a great story you can sell. Despite all my criticism of George Knapp, he's excellent at framing a great story here. I'll give him that. It sounds good, right? Until you peel back some of the layers of deception used to put this fraud together, but we'll get into that.
That alien technology is being tested in the Nevada desert. The speculation first surfaced in documents obtained by UFO researchers, documents about something called Project Aquarius. The documents, allegedly prepared for an organization called MJ-12, state that a program to fly recovered alien spacecraft was established in 1972 and is continuing in Nevada. The National Security Agency has confirmed it does have a Project Aquarius, but denies it has anything to do with flying saucers.
So somebody used a real project name and allegedly faked these documents. Some say those documents came directly from known paid disinformation agent Richard Doty.
NSA will not say what Project Aquarius is. Speculation was heightened in 1984 when the Air Force seized nearly 90,000 acres around Groom Lake. The action was, by most accounts, illegal. During congressional hearings about the land grab, Congressman John Seiberling grilled the military about the legal authority used in the action and was told the authority was at a much, much higher level than the Air Force. Seiberling asked what authority is higher than the laws of the United States. The Air Force official said he could respond, but only in a closed briefing.
Oh, closed briefing. He needed a skiff. Does that sound familiar? Boy, some things never change.
In 1987, when the Air Force sought to renew its stranglehold on the Groom Range, news articles once again mentioned the talk about alien spacecraft.
Yeah, and by the way, they did do a big land grab, but apparently that was to prevent some looky-loos and curious onlookers who would show up, and some even with cameras around the base, and were able, with telephoto lenses in some cases, to get a pretty good look at the base. So they grabbed more land to push curious people even further back.
And subsequent articles in national magazines quoted unnamed sources about things of alien origin flying in Nevada, things that would make filmmaker George Lucas drool. Despite the speculation, no one who knew Area 51 from the inside ever talked publicly.
That's the second time he's setting this Bob Lazar story up. No one has ever broken their vows of secrecy about what really goes on at Area 51, but we've got the guy who's going to do that.
About the saucer stories.
Well, there's several, actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs that are out there of extraterrestrial origin.
The live interview with the shadowy Dennis drew international attention.
Yes, and this is very important. We have to view things in context and know and understand that before this Bob Lazar story, George Knapp was not nationally known. He was not internationally known or famous. He was just a local Las Vegas news reporter. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but Bob Lazar was his ticket to international fame and stardom.
Portions were broadcast by radio in 6 European countries and in a nationally televised TV special in Japan.
Actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs.
Despite numerous...
And here, again, remember, John Lear, just a year or so prior, said there was 3 spacecraft. Bob Lazar, the story gets grander. Now there's 9. And it's important to remember that at the time, Bob Lazar and John Lear knew each other, along with Bob Lazar's then, or who would later become Bob Lazar's partner, to cash in on this UFO story of his, one Gene Huff.
Numerous inquiries.
They were all friends.
And feelers, Dennis has remained anonymous until now. His real name is Robert Lazar, a young scientist with eclectic interests. The choice of Dennis was an inside joke, he said.
Yeah, and I do have a problem even with his reporting here. George Knapp is going to mention in a moment that he tried to verify his educational claims and couldn't. You know, in order to be called a scientist, you need a science degree. And Bob Lazar, after 30 years, has yet to prove he has a real science degree. He did have a degree mill degree from Pacifica University, someplace that would just sell you a fake degree. But calling him a scientist here is a huge stretch.
Says that's the name of his superior at Groom Lake. It wasn't a joke to Dennis.
He called right after and he said, "Do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now?" And I said, "Well, no." He hung up the phone.
Lazar's story is, by any standards, fantastic. He says he's telling it in order to protect himself.
Yeah, and that was oh, I'm doing this to protect myself because they're going to kill me over this. You know, the air of danger is an often used plot device in UFO stories, right?
He says he was hired to work at an area called S4, which is a few miles south of Groom Lake.
Yes, and there is a distinction to be made. I saw Louis Caetano mention earlier that because somebody said S4 doesn't exist, and actually it does on the Tonopah test range, and apparently it is a radar installation, and it has nothing to do with aliens, the real S4. But Bob Lazar took that name and created this mythical place off of Papoose Lake inside Area 51, where he claimed that there was alien technology and a base there carved into the side of the mountain to study that alien technology.
At S4, he says, are flying saucers, antimatter reactors, and other working examples of technology that is seemingly beyond human capabilities.
Right. This came from somewhere else. I mean, as bizarre as that is to believe, but I mean, it's there. I saw it. I know what the current state of the art is in physics, and it can't be done.
Checking out Lazar's credentials proved to be a difficult task. He said,
yeah, difficult task. It's impossible task. And even George Knapp has to admit and acknowledge that Bob Lazar's claimed educational history is completely and totally fake. And there's many reasons that we can verify that his educational credentials are completely and totally fake. First of all, you can call the schools and verify that he never went to either Caltech or MIT. Secondarily, he claimed that he got a degree from Caltech, a master's degree from Caltech, in a program they did not even have at the time he claimed to go there. I believe he claimed he got an electronics technology degree from Caltech. They didn't have a master's degree program in that, but I could be mistaken on the specifics. I'm just acutely aware, I remember strongly, that Bob Lazar's claimed, degree from Caltech couldn't even have happened because they didn't even have that master's program at the time he claimed he got it from them. And additionally, both Caltech and MIT would check his credentials before allowing him into a master's program. There would be, and by the way, buying a degree from a degree mill and going to one class at a community college doesn't qualify you to go to either MIT or Caltech. And of course, Stanton Friedman did a full deep dive into Bob Lazar's real educational history and found out that he graduated from high school in the bottom third of his class. Those unremarkable scholastic achievements of his wouldn't have gotten him into either Caltech or MIT. Additionally, a researcher, Michael Schratt, went and got all the yearbooks for MIT and Caltech and scoured them all. Not a single mention of Bob Lazar. And there would be if he actually went there. So, and I love the Men in Black explanation. They erased his records. That would mean that the Men in Black had to crawl into every dusty attic, every garage of everybody that went to MIT and Caltech, erase Bob Lazar out of all those yearbooks, and then, sanitize them and then sneak them back into everybody's dusty attic, garage, wherever they're storing them. There's no mention of him in any of the yearbooks. There would be if he was a real student there. Then there's conflicting stories because he told some people, oh, I never went to MIT. I just hung out there. I would sneak into some of the lectures and stuff because I like science. So his education is completely and totally fake, which means he's not a scientist. And the whole story revolves around him being a government scientist. There's no proof he worked for the government, full stop, period. And there's no proof he's a real scientist, full stop. And yeah, I guess he built some rocket cars, but it's interesting that his direct neighbor, when he was growing up, built and sold jet engines. So he adapted that technology, put it on a bike, later put one in a car. That doesn't make him a scientist.
Says he earned degrees in physics and electronics, but the schools we contacted say they've never heard of him. He also said he worked as a physicist at Los Alamos National Lab, where he experimented with one of the world's largest particle beam accelerators.
Yes, and this point alone proves Bob Lazar is a huge liar, because Bob Lazar claimed that he was a senior staff level physicist at Los Alamos, the most prestigious lab in the world, really. And that didn't pan out to be true. It turns out that Bob was a subcontractor, a very low-level electronics technician, the kind of guy that would get you a mouse if you broke your mouse or spilled coffee on your mouse or keyboard. He would run network cables. He was not a scientist at Los Alamos. And we know this because a researcher by the handle of Signals Intelligence, who has a blog, interviewed all of Bob Lazar's actual supervisors at Los Alamos, and all of them confirmed that Bob Lazar wasn't a scientist at Los Alamos. He was an electronics technician.
A half-mile-long behemoth capable of generating 700 million volts. Los Alamos officials told us they had no records of a Robert Lazar ever working there.
And they were correct in that, because Bob Lazar did not work directly for LANL or Los Alamos National Lab. He worked for a subcontractor called Kirk Meyer. Kirk Meyer didn't hire scientists. They only hired, you guessed it, low-level electronics technicians. And then they would subcontract them out to different labs. So this is why Bob Lazar was found in the phone book, because for a short time he was an electronics technician as a subcontractor at that lab.
They were either mistaken or were lying. A 1982 phone book from the lab lists Lazar right there among the other scientists and technicians.
Yes, and he didn't show you the full shot, but in the full shot of that actual phone book, next to Bob Lazar's name is the initials KM, meaning Kirk Meyer. He was a subcontractor. And again, Kirk Meyer did not hire scientists. They hired electronics technicians.
A 1982 clipping from the Los Alamos newspaper profiled Lazar and his interest in jet cars. It too mentioned his employment at the lab as a physicist.
Yes, and since then, the person who actually wrote that article has come out and publicly stated that he did not fact check Bob Lazar. He just took Bob Lazar said, "I'm a physicist. I work at Los Alamos." And he just printed that. He did not check into that. So that is not proof that he was, because it was in a newspaper, isn't proof he's a physicist. And by the way, I believe Jeremy Corbell got in hot water because he claimed that the author of that did call and check or did verify Bob Lazar's being a physicist at Los Alamos. Claims he later, pretty recently, I believe, came out and said, "No, I never fact checked him. I just took what he said at face value and I printed it."
We called Los Alamos again. An exasperated official told us he still had no records on Lazar. EG&G, which is where Lazar says he was interviewed for the job at S4, also has no records. It's as if someone has made him disappear.
Well, they're trying to make me a non-person.
Explain. You called where?
Yes. So when confronted with these problems in his original story, Bob Lazar concocts this Men in Black explanation. When you really get in trouble and get caught 100% lying in your UFO or alien story, and there's no other way, you gotta haul out the Men in Black, right? What you gotta do is, listen, the Men in Black came, and that's why you can't find those records. They erased me from existence. And I'm aware that Stanton Friedman even checked with lawyers. You can't just erase somebody from MIT or Caltech. That would be a huge liability. They could sue you out the wazoo if you agreed to do that, for the government or anybody else. But don't let that get in the way of a good alien story that you could sell.
Well, the schools that I went to, the hospital that I was born at, past job, and essentially nothing comes up with my name in it.
He smiles, but out of futility, knowing the whole thing must sound ridiculous. According to Lazar, his employer was the United States Navy. He says he and other government employees would gather near EG&G, fly to Groom Lake, then a very few people would get into a bus with blacked out or no windows and drive to S4.
Yeah, and this is problematic because you can look at the area where he said this mythical S4 base was, and there's no way that a bus is getting through there. There's not even a road. Period, full stop. So, and the other issue is that a verified and real Area 51 security guard has publicly stated in an interview, we shared it here, that he checked all the flight logs. In order to get in or out of Area 51, you have to fly in, most people, on these Janet Airlines, and there's a check-in and check-out log for those flights. As soon as the Bob Lazar story aired and Bob Lazar's name became public, this Area 51 security guard checked all of the flight logs and the check-in and check-out logs at Area 51. So Bob Lazar claimed he flew in and went to Area 51 and then was driven to the mythical, imaginary land of make-believe alien base, S4. But the truth is that he never stepped foot on a Janet airline or stepped foot on Area 51, according to a real and verified Area 51 security guard that was working there at the time Bob first came out with his story. That Area 51 security guard even called George Knapp and warned him that he may want to be careful selling this story, since Bob Lazar never flew on Janet Airlines and Bob Lazar never stepped foot on Area 51. But again, apparently, and by the way, that's the Area 51 security guard's claim that he called and warned George Knapp. Apparently, George Knapp, to my knowledge, never reported that this happened, or that the information exists that Bob's not in the flight logs. The information exists that Bob's not in the check-in or check-out logs. But again, you can't let pesky things like facts and real evidence from real and verified sources get in the way of a great alien story you could sell.
When you get off the bus, what do you see?
It's a very interesting building. It's got a slope of probably about 30 degrees, which are hangar doors. And it has textured paint on it, but it looks like sand. It's made to look like the side of the mountain that it's in, whether it's to disguise it from satellite photographs or what.
He says he was never told exactly what he'd be working on, but figured it had something to do with advanced propulsion. On his first day, he was told to read a series of briefings and immediately realized how advanced the propulsion was.
The power source is an antimatter reactor.
You're right, Luis. Yeah.
They run gravity amplifiers. There's actually two parts to the drive mechanism. It's a bizarre technology. There's no physical hookup between.
Yeah, and it's interesting that most real physicists that digest Bob Lazar's explanation for this don't really buy it.
Any of the systems in there, they use gravity as a wave, using waveguides, almost like microwaves.
It took a while, Lazar says, before he actually saw one of the flying discs. However, there were hints everywhere.
Right, they had a poster, and it looked like a commercial poster almost, like it was lithographed, and you could buy it at a Kmart or something. But they were all over the place, and it had the disc that I coined the term the sport model, was lifted off the ground about 3 feet at Area S4 on the dry lake there, and the caption on the bottom said, "They're here."
Yeah, so if you have alien technology, I guess, you'd make posters, right, to put up around the base of that alien technology. Okay.
And those are just all over the place.
Later, he got to see the real thing.
When I was let in, it was the first time I saw the sport model in the hangar sitting down, and I was told they could have walked me in the front door, but they purposely wanted to walk me by it. I was told not to say anything and just keep my eyes forward and walk past the disc into the office area. And I did, and as we went by it, I just kind of stuck my hands on it just to run it alongside the thing, and that was about the smallest time. After that, I got to see it actually lift off the ground and operate.
But you also, in between that, you saw more than one.
Interesting claims.
The hangars are all connected together, and there are large bay doors between each one. And there were 9 total that I saw, each one being different. Like they had the assortment pack.
Security at S4 was oppressive, yes. Lazar says, and his superiors used fear and intimidation almost as a brainwashing tool.
It did everything but physically hurt me.
Yeah, and of course, these claims of like, this is so secret, they'll kill you for it, is part of the danger aspect of the story. And reluctant hero, we talked about that recently. Bob Lazar's a reluctant hero coming forward and telling us the truth about those aliens. Never mind that he's trying his very best to fill his pocket with every UFO dollar he can while he's doing it, and he was bankrupt before the story that he came up with. Never mind that.
Put a gun to your head?
Yeah.
And said what? Actually put a gun to your head?
Well, they did that even in the original security briefings. They had guards there with M16s, and guys slamming their finger into my chest, screaming in my ear, some people pointing weapons at me. Like I said, it's not a good place to work.
That fear factor would surface later. Lazar agreed to undergo a polygraph exam as part of this report. This is great. Polygrapher Ron Slay asked about the technology.
Now, we've done a whole separate video called Bob Lazar's Lie Detector Claims Destroyed, because there's a lot of disinformation and false information going on. And we also contacted the American Polygraphers Association, because you're not supposed to do a whole bunch of polygraphs. And as we'll hear described here, it seems like George Knapp just kept giving him polygraphs until he passed one. That's not the way it works. You get one bite at the apple. And if you're deceptive in that, you're deceptive. You're a liar. But so there's some lack of ethics here. And at the time that they did these lie detector tests, Bob Lazar's educational claims just got completely and totally destroyed by Stanton Friedman, who, was sounding the alarm like this guy's a fraud. Suddenly, they need something to bolster this story. Along comes George Knapp. Let's lie detector test him. And let's just keep testing him until he passes one. It's ridiculous.
Lazar had seen.
Did you knowingly lie when you said you had actually seen anti-gravity propulsion in operation?
No.
The results of this exam were inconclusive. Lazar appeared to be truthful on one test, deceitful on a second. Slay recommended that a second.
Yeah, and again, if he was truthful on the first one, you don't keep going. If he was deceptive on the first one, you don't keep going. You don't do multiple tests, according to the American Polygraphers Association. But not only were 2 tests done by one examiner, then George Knapp brings in more polygraphs, trying to get the results he wants, I guess.
Second examiner be brought in. Polygrapher Terry Tavernetti runs a corporate security operation and is a former Los Angeles police officer.
And a very close friend of George Knapp. No coincidence there.
He put Lazar through 4 tests and concluded there was no attempt to deceive.
And I left there thinking that.
Yeah, and this is also a problem because we've got 2 tests from one polygrapher. Now we've got 4 tests from this guy, Terry Tavernetti, close friend of George Knapp's, who at various times has given completely and totally conflicting statements. In this report, he's saying there's no indication of deception on those 4 tests. But it's more complicated than that because later, in another documentary, Terry Tavernetti said he failed the first test. And, then he gave him more tests. So this whole lie detector situation is incredibly shady.
I feel we do have some credibility to what the subject had to say. And that's when I went to some of my colleagues.
Tavernetti sent the test results to a 3rd polygrapher who agreed the results appeared truthful. The charts were then sent to a 4th examiner who did not agree, suggesting Lazar might be relating information he'd learned from someone else. The polygraphers conferred and decided they would not issue a final statement on truthfulness until more specific testing can be conducted.
And more specific testing was not conducted. I guess, 6 tests is enough, right? Wouldn't you think so? Asking them the same question 6 times, trying to get, and were they just trying to get to a certain result? And in another documentary, Terry Tavernetti says there was absolutely no indication of deception. But in another documentary, he says he failed the first one. So there's a lot of controversy surrounding these lie detector tests and claims. I think that should all just be thrown out as, worthless information. If he failed the first one and you just kept giving him more, or he passed one and he failed one, and you don't keep giving polygraphs. You get one bite at the apple.
And that's where it stands. Tavernetti believes that difficulty in determining Lazar's truthfulness stems from the fear that was drilled into him.
I think we're talking about a subject here that is so far-reaching, and it is so emotional. And when you're dealing with emotions, this is polygraph, because in polygraph, you're looking at fear. The fear of getting caught telling a lie because something bad will happen to you if you do.
Well, I am telling the truth. I've tried to prove that.
He's offered 0 proof for 30 years. He's got a story.
What's going on up there could be the most important event in history. You're talking about contact, physical contact, and proof from another system, another planet, another intelligence. That's got to be the biggest event in history, period.
And it's real.
And it's real, and it's there. And I had an extremely small part in it, but I'm convinced that what I saw is absolute proof of that. There is no way we could have created those systems. There's no way we could have made the discs, the power supplies, anything to go with them.
Lazar says he has no intention of going on any UFO.
I like that it's a guy who only did one electronics class at a local community college who is asserting his expert opinion that there's no way on Earth that humans could have developed the technology he saw. We can recognize and understand for a moment that maybe he did see something, right? But what proof is there that it could not have been developed by humans? We have his word, the word of a convicted pimp, fake scientist with a fake education, whose only real education was apparently going to one electronics class at Pierce Junior College. I don't think he's qualified, in my opinion, to render an expert opinion on what technology humanity is capable of developing. But again, don't let something like facts and evidence get in the way of a good story you could sell.
Lecture circuit. He's not looking to do any additional interviews. In fact, he wasn't too crazy about doing this one. He did it after certain unfavorable things started happening in his life, and he did it because he feels that whoever is running the show up at S4 is perpetrating a fraud on the American people and on the scientific community. We intend to have much more
somebody's
about this story,
perpetrating a
about the
fraud.
operation up there on Monday and beyond. This is by no means the end of this series of reports. In fact, on Monday, including in our story there, support testimony from other people who say they have knowledge of the flying discs at the test site, and information from people who know Lazar very well and insist his story is true.
If indeed they have these flying saucers, George, it seems like it'd be really hard to keep it so secret.
Well, yeah, it would seem that way, except for as Lazar asked his superiors up there, they say it's the easiest secret in the world to keep. It's leaked out many times
nobody
before,
will believe
and nobody believes it.
Nobody will believe it.
What's the Navy saying about all of this?
Well, of course, the Navy is supposed to have been his employer, and we have put some fairly pointed questions to them. Of course, number one, it may not be the Navy at all. Information is so compartmentalized up there, no one is exactly sure who is in charge. We have put the questions to several Navy departments. The answers thus far have been unsatisfactory. We've applied for more information through the Freedom of Information Act, and that information will be revealed on Monday as well.
You believe his story, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've got to know him pretty well over the last couple of months, and I believe he's telling the truth.
George Knapp believes he's telling the truth, even though his, I don't know what, could it be that George Knapp was just blinded by the money and the international fame that this story brought? And after all, he kept pushing the story for 30 years now.
Fascinating stuff. Thanks,
George.
George.
All right.
This week.
We made it through that, which I'm happy about, because there is, let me fix this. There is some business to attend to. That's better. So for those unaware, we thank every single person who is throwing a couple of bucks in our hat. We want to thank Tales of the Sonic Voyage for a kind and generous $5 super chat, and for being a member. As always, thanks for laying out the facts for us, Stephen. My pleasure, and thanks for being a member, and thanks for throwing a couple bucks in our hat. We appreciate you. Thanks for appreciating us. TL with a kind and generous $4.99 super chat, no message. We've got Richard Crawley with a kind and generous $6.99 super sticker. Thank you for your kindness and generosity in it. And Chris Johansson with a kind and generous $150 Canadian. Wow, very generous of you. Thank you so much for your kindness, generosity, and support. What can I say, friends? Tonight we are praising the cash hard.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
We thank you, Chris Johansson, for your kindness, generosity, and support. Very kind of you. And we thank Richard Crawley, TL, and of course, Tales of the Sonic Voyage. Thank you all for your kindness, generosity, and support. So, of course, I have more to share in our presentation tonight. Welcome if you're just joining us. We are discussing Area 51 and aliens. And these are Area 51 and S4 myth makers, as I call them. So we are halfway through our journey, friends. John Lear, George Knapp, and Bob Lazar, in my estimation and my historical view, were the first to really popularize this idea that there are indeed aliens at Area 51 and alien spacecraft, and that technology is being back engineered there. We've heard details of John Lear describing a secret base on Area 51 that had 3 flying saucers. And those claims were made shortly before Bob Lazar, who was one of his friends, suddenly comes forward with this fantastic story that he got a job at Area 51. And while there, he worked on those flying saucers that John Lear described. But there wasn't 3 of them. There was 9 of them. So the story becomes more grand. And our next contestants on Area 51 and S4 myth makers, they do the same. And they make the story even more sensational. And they expand on the foundation that was clearly laid. So this is one of those things, friends, that I don't know why, but this fascinates me to see how this mythology is created and expanded upon and added on to and developed over a period of time. Now, I believe the next people on our list here of Area 51 and S4 myth makers, which include Robert Dean, Dan Burrish, Wendell Stevens, and Connor O'Ryan. I believe that they saw the international fame and all of the attention that Bob Lazar's story was getting. And suddenly, these guys sort of come along and they tack on extra bits. But they weave their stories into the original Bob Lazar mythology. So they sort of base their stories off of Bob Lazar. So Robert Dean was a UFO researcher, and actually we're going to try to tackle Robert Dean and Wendell Stevens because they were close friends, they were neighbors, and UFO researchers. But it's important to note and point out that these guys, Robert Dean and Wendell Stevens, were fixtures at UFO conferences. In fact, I talked to a friend today who went to virtually every UFO convention in the United States in the 90s and in the early 2000s. And Wendell Stevens and Robert Dean were at almost all of them as speakers, paid speakers. And it's important to know and understand and recognize that these people are not telling stories. They are selling stories. So Robert Dean was famously involved in the so-called alien interview, which we have covered extensively here. For those unaware, the alien interview is a rather comical documentary that claimed to include footage of an actual alien being interviewed at Area 51. And Robert Dean was heavily involved in that. Some say he was part of the hoax. And we know it was a hoax because we have proven here that there is a character who claimed he got the tape out of Area 51 somehow, named Victor. But what we find out is that the person asking Victor the questions in the documentary and the person answering the questions about this alien interview are the very same person. They just used a voice disguiser and somebody interviewed themselves. And I believe that Robert Dean was involved. And what they did is they made an amalgam of a UFO whistleblower. Bob Dean sat there and they put him in shade and shadow. People proved he's wearing the same tie. There's the same color background to Bob Dean's house in that documentary. Wonderful hoax. But Bob Dean built on the mythology created by Bob Lazar, creating this thing, being heavily involved in this thing, promoting and attesting that this alien interview is real. It was a hoax, friends. I'm convinced of that. Interestingly, that hoax was produced by the same person who produced the movie Teen Wolf. That's right. Before Michael J. Fox was famous for Back to the Future, his most famous role was Teen Wolf. I believe that they were cashing in on the popularity of Bob Lazar and other alien and UFO stories. Interestingly, Wendell Stevens, who was another UFO fixture at UFO conferences, and Wendell Stevens believed everyone was telling him the truth, including Billy Meyer. Go look up those hokey ass, UFO pictures made out of trash can lids and, silver spray paint hung up on fishing wire. Wendell Stevens was also a convicted child-related sexual predator. He did jail time for that. So Wendell Stevens comes along, realizing, I think, the popularity of Bob Lazar, and he comes up with this person, Connor O'Ryan, who claimed to be an Area 51 security guard, but none of that guy's background check out. It turns out that he was basically Connor O'Ryan, who worked with Wendell Stevens to push this thing called S4 Informers. Wendell Stevens made a whole series of videos that he would sell on VHS tapes at UFO conventions, oh, we've got all the truth about the aliens at Area 51, and they called it S4 informers. Now remember, Bob Lazar is the person who first called the base, the sub base where they work on the alien technology, S4. So Wendell Stevens takes that S4 and again expands upon it. And Connor O'Ryan has all kinds of details that Bob Lazar failed to give about all the alien spacecraft and the back engineering projects and what that base is like and how they have alien bodies in it. And more and more and more gets piled onto the original Bob Lazar story. And of course, this is my belief and speculation, having thoroughly digested. I think there's 6 hours of that material. Sadly, it used to be on YouTube. I think we tried to find it once before and somebody sent me some links. Maybe somebody can send those to me again. We can do a full deep dive into that material, but I think it's largely a fruitless endeavor because this Connor O'Ryan was literally a con artist and like a homeless grifter. And to this day, people still speculate about whether Connor O'Ryan actually came up with the stories or whether Wendell Stevens just sort of coached him of what to say. And there's ridiculous videos where Wendell Stevens is interviewing this Connor O'Ryan and they're just like sitting in the desert. Wendell Stevens is giving this guy cigarettes and liquor. And he's telling this whole story about the base at Area 51 called S4, which Connor O'Ryan claimed that he was a security guard at. He was special forces. Of course, he also claimed that he was going on assassination missions for, I think, the CIA. It gets really crazy and wackadoodle. And now remember, the entire original claims, both from John Lear, George Knapp, and Bob Lazar, are not proven. They are stories. It's very sensational stories, very mysterious and enigmatic, right? But none of those stories from John Lear, George Knapp, or Bob Lazar were ever proven to be true. But then along comes the B Squad here. That's what I'm calling them. The B Squad comes in realizing the potential for the money to be made. And I think the person that did it best, the B Squad member who did it best, is Dan Burish. Dan Burish was, in fact, a person with real scientific credentials. And Dan Burish claims that he was hired to work at, wait for it, S4. Yes. Dan Burish came out with his story years after Bob Lazar and claimed that he was a member of MJ12 and that he was hired to work at Area 51 S4 to be a sort of biologist because there was an alien there that was dying of some kind of genetic malfunction, and they needed to bring in a very skilled, talented scientist biologist to help figure out how to fix this alien. Essentially, this is his story. We did extensive research, or I should say I did extensive research into Dan Burish when he first came out. I believe in the 90s. So we found out that his education was real, but everything else about Dan Burish turned out to be a complete and total fabrication. And in fact, at the time that Mr. Burish claimed that he was working on alien tissue samples, and of course we get this whole incredible story. Oh, it's a great story. Dan Burish, there's an alien at Area 51 that's in this biodome, and Dan Burish is there studying it, right? And he had a personal interaction with the extraterrestrial. And then we sort of get this riff or find out that it's not really an alien. It's a human from the future who came back in time to try to figure out how to fix their genetic deformities or problems somehow. It's a wild, wild story. And interestingly, a lot of the mythology, one second, let me get to my notes here. A lot of the additional mythology, let's call it additional mythology about Bob Lazar's so-called S4 base gets fleshed out. Dan Burish comes along and he takes the basic gist of things that Bob Lazar said, that there's a secret base where alien technology is back engineered and worked on at Area 51. And he claims, after Bob Lazar, that he too was hired to go to that very same alien base. And at the base, like I said, he worked on, some sort of alien genetic programs. And Dan Burish, expanded on much of what Bob Lazar talked about, including Project Looking Glass, which was apparently some sort of time travel device where you could view things. It was just a screen that you could view, and you can see any point in time and possible outcomes. So here, this is some of the diagrams. So the mythology gets incredibly expanded by this person, Dan Burish, who described in greater detail. Look, there's the sport model. They even bring that in exactly as it was described by Bob Lazar, which, I don't think that's a coincidence. And then we get details about the other spacecraft. And let's count the hangars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 hangars. Wow. Just a coincidence? Exactly as Bob Lazar described it. There's 9 hangars there, right? Incredible. And I believe that these illustrations are by Michael Schratt. But it's important to note, I just talked to Michael Schratt earlier today. Haven't spoken to him in quite some time. Michael Schratt no longer, he knows that Dan Burish was a fraud and a liar and a storyteller. He no longer supports that his stories were at all true. However, it is interesting that he did some work. He would draw what it was that Mr. Burish was describing. And let me share my screen again. There's some more details from those things. And so the story gets incredibly, incredibly expanded upon by Dan Burish, the stories of S4. And we get, again, this expansion of the original ideas of Bob Lazar. Interesting that they include, he saw the sport model too, and he saw the 9 hangars built into the side of the mountain, just as Bob Lazar has described. And I have to make sure that we recognize and understand that to some people, another person coming forward saying the same things, some of the same things that Bob Lazar said, to some was confirmation that Bob Lazar was telling the truth. I, for one, don't believe in 2 people telling unverified stories, making those stories any more believable. But to some people, Dan Burish coming forward and expanding on Bob Lazar's stories was proof that Bob Lazar was telling the truth. And it's interesting. There's all kinds of illustrations made. Apparently, the S4 base has got some sort of motif or preoccupation with Alice in Wonderland, and there's a statue, a stuffed Alice in Wonderland rabbit is permanently mounted above the entrance to the Project Looking Glass room. So there's all these strange details added, and here we see how the mythology of the so-called Area S4 is expanded upon madly. Bob Lazar didn't do this level of detail, so somebody did it for him, right? And it's interesting to note that this person, Dan Burish, again, he was employed in Las Vegas at the time, and I had verified that he wasn't at S4 or at Area 51 at the time he claimed to be, his employment records, and I get it. People will say, oh, that was a cover story, Stephen, while he's working on the alien base at Area 51. If you want to believe that, you can. But Dan Burish's stories got more and more ridiculous as time went on. And he started claiming that at various times, I think that MJ-12 was trying to kill him for coming out and saying this stuff about the S4. And again, the level of detail that was created, some people took Dan Burish seriously when he first came out with his story. And unfortunately, I believe that Mr. Burish wasted a lot of good researchers' time on his basically nonsensical stories. Here we see the decontamination area at Clean Sphere, you know, where I guess you got to decontaminate after you go see the aliens, right? It's a great story. You can buy the book, but not from me. And interestingly, I'm not sure whatever happened with Dan Burish. I think I checked in on him like maybe 5 years ago, and he was still trying to run this grift. But he has largely fallen out of popularity or even discussion among anybody in the UFO community. It's just a footnote in history. Dan Burish comes along and, you know, expands upon the aliens and S4 stories. And, you know, I guess Dan Burish's story worked pretty well for a while because people had already sort of digested and accepted as truth Bob Lazar's tales of an S4 alien base, right? Interestingly, it's not just Dan Burish's drawings, or excuse me, Michael Schratz's documentation and sort of diagrams of what Dan Burish describes, but somebody has actually done an incredible job recreating this so-called alien S4 base from Unreal Engine. And I thought this was interesting. And I may get a copyright claim for even playing this for you, but I've done my best to make it a transformative work. We're going to leave my banner up that this is transformative work. This is a very enjoyable video to me because the truth is, I grew up with the Bob Lazar story. It's what really got me down the rabbit hole of aliens, or, you know, and as a young man, I truly believed that Bob Lazar was telling the truth. Couldn't get enough of anything to do with Bob Lazar's stories. So I suppose after Bob Lazar, I did watch all of this and digest all of it with great interest and even belief. Robert Dean was, you know, he was former Army officer and seemed very credible. And Wendell Stevens, former Air Force officer, kind of seems credible. And what I didn't know at the time I was digesting the Connor O'Ryan material called S4 Informers from Wendell Stevens, what I didn't know is that Wendell Stevens was a convicted child predator who spent time in jail. And that's another one you can buy the book on, but not from me. But anyway, Wendell Stevens also was a huge supporter of Billy Meyer, which is the biggest joke in UFOs. Like, look at how hokey. It's like Christmas balls and garbage cans spray painted silver hung up on lines. And this guy claims he's talking to aliens. Sure. So the Wendell Stevens was basically a hoax promoter who was also a child predator. Not an excellent source of information, but I didn't know it at the time, and neither did most people who were intensely interested in this subject. And this comes to the subject that I always talk about, which is you can't just take these things at face value, because at face value, we've got a former Air Force officer and a Special Forces guy who claims he was an Area 51 security guard. Sounds great, right? But when you peel back the layers of deception, you go beyond the surface level of the stories being told and also sold, you get a greater understanding of, I believe, what's really happening here. That these stories are carefully manicured and manipulated in order to make them sell. It does sound great. A former Air Force officer is interviewing a former Area 51 security guard, and we're going to get the truth about aliens. Awesome. This is why it works. And of course, Robert Dean was very credible to me at first. He told a very convincing story where he worked for NORAD, or I'm sorry, he was an officer in the military. And while there, one second. Yeah, he did. He worked for NORAD, the North American. No. He didn't work for NORAD. Hold on. He worked for NATO. That's where he worked. And this is, of course, an intergovernmental organization. And while working for NATO, Robert Dean claimed that he saw this document called the assessment, which all of the members of NATO were aware of the presence of aliens and extraterrestrials on Earth. And this document he claims that he saw detailed different alien species, UFO crash retrievals. It sort of confirmed that it's all true. And that was his original story. Seems pretty believable and credible. But then Robert Dean continued to work UFO conventions for decades. Then he gets involved in the Alien Interview, which is largely considered to be a hoax by any real or serious researcher into these topics. It's basically, a puppet and really kind of a joke of an effort. Like I said, when you peel back those layers of deception, what we get is an Area 51 whistleblower who's being interviewed by himself. It's the same voice. When you take the voice disguiser off, really ridiculous. And later, of course, Robert Dean also, besides being involved in that hoax, he started working UFO conventions and just talking about like his superpowers. I'm not kidding you. And his past lives and, his psychic powers. He suffered from UFO disease, which is people tired of his original story. And he couldn't get the bookings anymore unless he could tell the people running these conventions, oh no, I've got a new lecture. So he started just going down the rabbit hole of woo. And before you know it, this guy who once had a very credible, believable story turned into a total woo fest of like his superpowers and interdimensional astral travel and communicating with the aliens telepathically. Basically, he became a huge wackadoo. And I've seen this happen so many times. I call it UFO disease because they need new material and they just get deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. Of course, John Lear, same thing. When he first came out with his original stuff, it was grounded. It seemed believable. Here we've got John Lear, who's like, his father's super rich and he was involved in CIA spy missions, and he's a well-respected, known pilot who's flown every aircraft. He had speed records for flying super fast aircraft at one time. Very credible and believable. But as time went on, John Lear too suffered from UFO disease. And before we know it, John Lear is talking about there's hundreds of thousands of people on the moon. There's millions of people on Mars, and they're lying to us. I think he also believed that Saturn and Venus were completely and totally habitable planets, and there's hundreds of thousands of people living there. The moon is artificial. All kinds of wackadoo stuff. He also claimed that he went on sort of monster hunting missions during Vietnam. And, sort of secret missions to kill monsters in the jungle. So it gets wilder and wilder with these guys. The longer they're in and plugged into that UFO money drip that they're trying to get, and their stories get wilder and wilder and wilder. The Dan Burish situation is the same thing. He started talking about assassination attempts on him and MJ-12 chasing him, and it just got ridiculous. And the Connor O'Ryan story is bizarre because apparently that guy was involved in an awful lot of, let's just call it shady behavior, and may have been just somebody that needed money that was coached and given liquor and cigarettes to sit there and tell stories about aliens. And it's interesting that this is how these stories grow, evolve, and turn into it. This is what we're witnessing with this is the birth of mythology about aliens and UFOs and alien technology at Area 51. And whether you choose to believe me or not, I believe that this right here and what we've described tonight, what we are witnessing is the birth of mythology. People come along, there's a great story, it gets then expanded upon, and new layers added. And some people believe that these other four promoting similar stories to the original storytellers somehow corroborates it and makes it all true. Let me know what you believe in the live chat. Let me know in the comments below the video. Are these stories of aliens and alien technology at Area 51 and also S4, are these stories true stories, or are we witnessing the genesis here of this mythology about aliens and UFOs? And isn't it interesting that millions and millions and millions of people believe it's true that the government is hiding aliens, alien technology, maybe intact spacecraft, and even alien bodies, and even live aliens at Area 51. And most of all of that came from these people, the Area 51 and S4 myth makers, as I call them. So I've got one more thing to share with you, but it's perhaps my favorite part of tonight's presentation. And that would be that somebody recreated Bob Lazar and recreated the S4 alien base, and they did it in Unreal Engine, and it is something else. I've provided a link to the description in the original video. I'm going to be stopping this and commentating over it so that we can prove, of course, that this is a transformative work and that this is fair use. We'll be critiquing and discussing the video that we are sharing and using it to educate people. This tips the balance, of course, in favor of fair use. I'm going to lower the volume. And I got to say, this was created by a very talented artist in Unreal Engine. Just amazing that he was able to do this. It gets better. Hold on. And this, of course, is Nellis Air Force Range in Groom Lake, Nevada. And after this video, we'll discuss the totally impossible, why it's totally impossible that S4 exists, at least where Bob Lazar and these others described it as being on Area 51. Also known as Area 51. Informants spread that there is a secret site called S4 about 30 miles from Nellis Range. And it's interesting that I believe Burish and Bob Lazar said it was in the same place. And I can provide an overwhelming mountain of evidence that there can't be a base there, but we'll get into that after this video. For now, I just want you to enjoy, it is interesting when we talk about this mythology that's created around some of these things. There's this guy that did this. First of all, he based this on Michael Schratt's diagrams and blueprints. Well-known UFO researcher who would sit there, I suppose, and listen to Dan Burish describe all these things and sketch it all out. And then again, so we've got Bob Lazar providing the first layer. Then along comes Dan Burish, and Michael Schratt helps him with these diagrams and these blueprints to expand on all this mythology and all these stories and add more bits to the story, the original story. more layers of stuff. And then along comes a very talented CGI artist who then takes Dan Burish's and Michael Schratt's information and these diagrams and blueprints that Michael Schratt, illustrated, and then turns it into a real CGI 3D experience. Again, this is how this mythology is popularized. This is how this mythology is created, and multiple layers are required to turn this into what it has become, which is modern mythology. Yes, so here we see this artist rendition. I think maybe Burish's and Bob Lazar's is slightly different, but both said it was built into the side of a mountain. And this, of course, the possible location of Area 51 S4. And of course, 9 hangars and a side entrance, just as Bob Lazar and Burish described. And so this animation is based on the story of Bob Lazar, but also the diagrams and illustrations created by Michael Schratt as described by Dan Burish. So now what we see is an amalgam, right? We talked about building mythology here. And isn't it interesting to recognize and understand all the parts that went into this, all of Bob Lazar's information, Dan Burish's information, and then this artist creates sort of an amalgam of both stories, which, by the way, it's important to point out that there are major inconsistencies between what Bob Lazar said and what Dan Burish said. But it still can be sort of just mixed together in an artistic way, again, to create this mythology. There we see the blueprint by Dan Burish and Michael Schratt. This, I have to say, this does look like you're going to a place where they hide the aliens, right? Let me know what you think in the comments. Does this look like you're going to a place where they hide the aliens? I think so. And one detail was left out. These are the infamous bus that takes you to Area S4, but the windows are not blacked out. So that's a discrepancy between the two stories, I suppose. Or maybe just artistic license in creating this video, this recreation. Here we see a checkpoint of sorts, right? Heavy oppressive security, right? You got to keep the alien secrets, so you need heavy oppressive security. Now we're getting deeper into the S4 base. Yeah, and I think this part comes from Burish, because I don't remember Bob Lazar describing anything like this. But hey, we're going to see the hand scanners, though. Yeah, and I think it's interesting, like, if you have a secret base, would you really, like, put a sign up, like, Area 51 S4 secret base? But, you know, that's what Burish described, I believe. And hey, those look like flat screen LCD monitors and things. So that would not be period correct. There would be CRT monitors at that time. But again, artistic license, I suppose. Now we're going to get to the good stuff. This is where the aliens are. And isn't this interesting that almost this exact setup was in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And it's just a coincidence that came well before either Bob Lazar or Dan Burish. And this hand scanner somehow made it into Bob Lazar's story. And in fact, when Jeremy Corbell repopularized the story, the only new information that we got from Jeremy Corbell's retelling and cashing in on the story was that, this hand scanner was in use. And how could Bob Lazar have known that? Jeremy Corbell talked about watching the movie Close Encounters like 100 times or something. It's his favorite movie, but he didn't know that was in the movie, according to Jeremy Corbell. Okay. There, we just saw the poster, but it's a bit different from what Bob Lazar described. It's a bit different here from what Bob Lazar just described in the video that we referenced with George Knapp. He said it was the sport model. Here, the spacecraft shown on the posters was the sport model. Here, it looks like a different model, more like an Adamski UFO. Oh, the infamous hand scanner. And now we're finally going to get in, right? And to see the alien spaceships. This is exciting. And by the way, based on the popularity of this, I believe, there's supposed to be a new Bob Lazar documentary where they're going to do a VR experience similar to what we're watching here, but probably more advanced and more photorealistic than this one, which was done in Unreal Engine. I still think this person did a great job. And believe it or not, this person got 1 million views on this video, I believe. 1 million views is pretty amazing, but that will show you just how much people want this information and enjoy this mythology. There's the briefing room where Bob Lazar read those briefings that talked about alien autopsies and alien technology. At least that's what Bob Lazar described. There's the propulsion laboratory where Bob Lazar claimed to have worked. And I believe that's some artistic license. That's not as Bob Lazar had described it, but again, this is a recreation. Yeah, if I was going to work on aliens, this would be the kind of place I'd want to do it, right? Let me know what you think in the live chat. I mean, it seems like a place that the government might house alien technology. This is why it works so well, because it seems believable. And now we get a look inside one of the hangars and see one of the spacecraft. Yeah, and I always found that these descriptions were a bit lacking. Like, I don't know what kind of hangar you would house an alien spacecraft in, but I would think you have a bit more equipment and gear than they usually describe with these things. But what do I know? I don't know what you need in an alien spacecraft hangar, so I could be wrong. Interesting. You get the whole walk around, right? And of course, this is just one hangar, and we open it up and you can see there's 9 of them. And this one may be a depiction of the sport model. It looks very similar to that. Yeah. And the sport model, of course, is what Bob Lazar claimed the spacecraft that he worked on was called. Oh, and this is the view to outside to the dry lake bed. Bob Lazar claimed that they would take it right out the hangar onto the dry lake bed, and he witnessed a propulsion test where it hovered off the ground. And of course, these are 2 hangars. There's supposedly 9 hangars. So, yeah, I guess this guy did them in sections. Bob Lazar described them as all 9 hangars connected. But of course, there's slight variations between Burish's depictions and statements and Bob Lazar's. So that's the mythical Area 51 S4 base. We've just gotten a walkthrough of it, courtesy of this CGI digital artist. This was done in Unreal Engine, and I think he did a pretty great job. Now, there are some real problems with the S4 story, and not the least of which, and this is one point, when we get to the part of separating mythology from real facts and evidence, it gets interesting. And I talked to Michael Schratt earlier today, and there was something that he shared with me that I completely and totally concur and agree with him on. I'd love to believe that this mythical place exists where they have alien technology and they have alien spacecraft, alien bodies, even aliens that they're interviewing and grilling, man. Grill them. Tell them, make them show us how free energy works, right? Make those aliens show us how we too could travel interstellarly, or how does anti-gravity work? I would, if I had access to aliens, we are exploitive as a human race, right? If I had access to actual aliens, I think I'd grill them. I'd want to know all the secrets of the universe if they were super advanced and so far ahead of us and technologically more capable than us. And I believe that anyone within the government or the military would seek to exploit that technology, seek to exploit those super advanced knowledge beings for our benefit. But one of the problems is that the story really falls apart, because where Bob Lazar and Dan Burish claimed that this mythical S4 base was simply couldn't be. And that is because that area is extremely radioactive. And in fact, one of the things, the devil is in the details, as they say. And one of the things both Dan Burish and Bob Lazar left out of their story is something called a dose badge. And this is from the Atomic Energy Museum. And these are all different badges that would be used to take a reading of the radiation that you were being exposed to. And in fact, the area where both Dan Burish, Bob Lazar, Connor O'Ryan, and others have claimed that area that S4 is at is so irradiated that you couldn't spend a significant amount of time there. Dan Burish claims he spent months there, I believe, and Bob Lazar went there 5 or 6 times, apparently, as best I recall. But the area is so irradiated that you would need a badge meter. Nobody talked about that. I think that would be a significant and important detail. Like, we can only spend 12 hours working on the alien technology because the site was so irradiated. And again, here's another shot of these meters, these badges that will take radiation readings. Nobody that claimed to work at Area S4 described this. And that is a glaring omission and an important part of the story to just leave out. And in fact, depending on the expert that you talk to, the area where they claim S4 was so irradiated that you couldn't spend significant amounts of time there. It's the radiation levels are too high in that area. You would need a badge. You could only spend a few hours there, or whatever the badge tells you. You know, if you're getting dosed with radiation, you can't spend a significant amount of time there. So the whole notion of where the mythical S4 base is literally falls apart just on real science. The United States government has faced significant lawsuits for things at Area 51, including the burn pits. For those unaware, they would just take stealth things and airplanes and secret things and make these huge burn pits. And there was basically chemical fires on the base, and people got cancer from it and sued the government. Putting an actual base in a place that is so irradiated you can't spend a significant amount of time there, and then forcing people to go work on alien technology at a place that's lit up with radiation would be an incredibly significant liability. And as evil as I think the United States government can be at times, I don't believe that they would willingly send people. I don't believe that they would willingly put a secret base in some place that's so irradiated you can't spend any significant amount of time there. And there is more and substantial evidence that the mythical S4 base does not exist where it was described to be by multiple so-called UFO whistleblowers. And there is just significant information. First of all, there's been recent flyovers of the Area 51 base and Papoose Lake. And those flyovers have confirmed that there's nothing where Bob Lazar said it was, or Dan Burish, or this Connor O'Ryan said it was. There's nothing there. And further, one second, I'm going to try to find some things to share with you. So let's get into more and substantial evidence that the base just isn't where people claim it to be. But before we do that, yeah, I'm going to share my screen. There is an excellent, very detailed report by Michael Schratt, and he's recently done a second revision of it. I'm going to be sharing this in the description of the video. I apologize. Hectic day today. We put a couple of the videos we shared in the description. I'll put a link, a Google Drive link. For those unaware, we often share the research materials that I use to create these shows so that other people can benefit from them. I believe Michael Schratt's okay with me sharing that. We'll put it on a Google Drive. So this is a sport model test flight. And this is, again, an illustration by Michael Schratt. And of course, there is, again, talk about building the mythology, right? People have taken descriptions and drawings that Bob Lazar has done and expanded upon them. And here we see examples of dose measures. Since, according to Lazar, Area S4 is located approximately 6 miles east of the Yucca Flat atomic bomb test site, then it would be logical to assume that anybody working at the facility would be issued dose badges as a precautionary measure against being exposed to potentially hazardous radiation. However, Lazar specifically stated that nobody at S4 facility was ever issued dose badges. That just couldn't be. If you're 6 miles from an atomic bomb test site, you need a dose badge. So the story falls apart based on the radiation levels that that place would have. And here's some more illustrations. Michael Schratt does a great job at trying to explain these things. And yeah, so the honeycomb access door, that's something Bob Lazar talked about. Yeah, and here we have the model. For all of you people who say Bob Lazar never tried to cash in, he got a model deal with Testers Model Corporation. And I famously try to find out how much money he made on that deal. And the public information officer, it's now owned by Rust-Oleum Paint Company, wouldn't help me. So we gave out his phone number live on air. Yeah, so interesting. You know, Bob Lazar said that these things look like they had little chairs in them. They were designed for 3.5 to 4 foot tall aliens, not full-size humans. Yeah. It measured 15 feet high, but there's discrepancies because the instruction manual for the tester's model says 16 feet high. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, Bob Lazar also stated that the gray aliens, which allegedly sat in the childlike seat, measured 3.5 to 4 feet in height, which would put them at the bottom of the hatch of 3 good feet over their heads. So how did they? This is another one of those minutia, right? The aliens couldn't reach the hatch. But don't let things like facts and evidence get in the way of a good story. But even if you recognize and know and understand that the story is fake, you do have to appreciate the artistry that people like Michael Stratt have put into trying to explain what Bob Lazar described. I think he's done a great job. And here's some more artist depiction. This one is by John Andrews, Mark Dickinson of the apparent S4 base. These are the hangars into the side of the mountain. I wanted to get, yeah, but this is interesting too. Bob Lazar claimed that he had a top secret clearance, which was 38 levels above Q to work at S4. The top secret Q clearance generally takes between 6 and 12 months to obtain, far too long of a time span for Lazar to have interviewed for the S4 job at S4 and starting work only 8 days later. So that's another problem with Bob Lazar's story. To get a Q clearance takes between 6 and 12 months. Bob Lazar claimed they did it for him, and he was working at Area 51 within 8 days of being interviewed. That's not how this works. But again, don't let things like facts and evidence get in the way of a good story that you can tell. And by the way, what we're referencing is Michael Stratt's Bob Lazar report, which is the most, I believe it's 50 pages. This is the most extensive and comprehensive research work on Bob Lazar's claims. And here we see more information. This, of course, is the story of Jerry Freeman, who walked across Area 51 right up to where Bob Lazar said the base was. Guess what's there? Nothing. So we've got a verified Area 51 security guard who claims Bob Lazar never stepped foot on the Janet airline flights. We have his fake education. We have Area 51 flyovers, which confirm there's nothing where Bob Lazar claimed it was, or Dan Burrish or this Connor O'Ryan claimed it was. And we also have this Jerry Freeman, who was a historical researcher. He walked across Area 51 right up to the Papoose Lake Mountains. Guess what? Nothing is Bob Lazar described. No guard shacks, no roads, nothing. And again, we have the flyovers, which also confirm that. And sadly, this person, Jerry Freeman, may have developed cancer due to time he spent where? In that radiation zone. Shortly after that, he died of cancer. And that, of course, may be connected. So this is the alleged S4 location. It's within the ridge based on all available data. And there's nothing there that Bob Lazar describes. It's just not there. Yeah, aerial photos taken of Papoose Lake by pilot Doc Searles in 1993 show no signs of a secret research facility built into the side of Papoose Lake mountain range. So unless the government moved it in 1989 and covered it all up, I guess they would have to just, shovel 18 tons of sand on top of those hangar bay doors. There's nothing that Bob Lazar described actually being there. And here we have some discussion of the SR-71 Blackbird, which was tested there. Then, of course, we have in 1993, members of Greenpeace successfully held a demonstration directly on Papoose Lake and reported absolutely no sign of a secret installation. So we're up to multiple 4 or 5 data points that confirm that nothing that Bob Lazar described is actually there, where he claims this mythical S4 secret base was. It's just not there. And we have multiple people confirming it's not there, multiple organizations confirming it's not there, a pilot who flew over confirming it's not there. This is why I get frustrated when people want to argue with me about Area 51 and aliens. as if, most of the time people haven't done this level of research that people like Michael Schrader or myself has done. But then here we get, this is a Black Star 2-stage to orbit space plane, another thing rumored to be working, to be being tested at Area 51. And yes, there are indeed space planes that are being tested. And this is a letter provides additional confirmation of an emergency landing that took place. Interesting that the research on this is so extensive. Yeah, and there was some talk. Bob Lazar claimed that the famous scientist Teller got him his job at Area 51. Interesting to connect yourself to a real and verified scientist. And so this Bob Lazar report really confirms for me, at least, along with my own research, that Bob Lazar is not now, nor has he ever worked at Area 51. It's just not real. It is, however, one of my favorite of all UFO and alien stories. And in fact, if I could pick one story to be real and true, I would probably pick this Bob Lazar story. I've been following it since 1989. And of course, I do want to take a moment to recognize and understand that, this mythology will continue. Because now we've got people like Dave Grush saying that the government is in possession of alien bodies and alien spacecraft. And one would wonder, is Dave Grush just repeating the stories that were first told to us by these people, the Area 51 and S4 myth makers? And again, John Lear and George Knapp and Bob Lazar sort of originated or planted the seed of the story. And boy, did that story grow. Then, of course, along comes the B Squad, Robert Dean, Dan Burish, Wendell Stevens, Connor O'Ryan, and others that are perhaps lesser known that I've left out of my report for time's sake. Boy, I thought I could get this all in and a wrap up in under 2 hours. We're just over 2 hours, friends. So there is a tremendous amount of information out there that, to me, confirms that what we're looking at is the creation of the profit-driven. We have to be sure that we specify. Again, these people are not telling stories, they're selling stories. And let's be clear, they were all very successful in their own ways at making a lot of money selling these stories about aliens at Area 51. But it's important that we also recognize and understand that after 30 years, John Lear, George Knapp, and Bob Lear haven't proven anything. And maybe 20 years or less, 10 years, these others, Robert Dean, Dan Burish, Wendell Stevens, and Connor O'Ryan, have equally not proven their stories. And isn't it interesting that now we have Dave Grush, who's telling similar stories, and we're up to, 143 days, and Dave Grush hasn't proven any of his stories are true? Will it be 30 years that will have gone by and Dave Grush will still have not proven his stories, like George Knapp, Bob Lazar, and others? I think it's interesting to watch and to sort of recognize and understand. I've never been a person that was incredibly interested in folklore, but when it comes to the UFO topic and stories of aliens, I am very interested. And lately I've been realizing that what we are witnessing is the creation of modern folklore or mythology. And like all mythology, remember, back in the day, Greek mythology wasn't a myth. These were true stories of gods and godlike beings and hybrid half god, half men and mythical creatures. And people believed that these stories, these myths, were real, were true. Is it any different that now we're in a modern age and people come along and create these modern mythoses? For tonight's subject matter is a great example. People come along and create these stories, these mythologies, and just as in ancient Greece, people believe that these aren't myths, that these are real and true stories. It's interesting that so much about humanity has changed, but so much remains the same. And one of the things that I've always been acutely aware of in my life is that the need to be entertained and amused and interested in something is a basic human necessity. And I always use this example. If your house were to burn down and you lost everything you own, the first thing you would have to do is establish a new place to live. But the very next thing that you would do for most people is take care of entertainment. As soon as you were in your new place, what are you going to buy? Video games, televisions, things to entertain yourself with. It's a basic human need. It's a basic human necessity. And while I have been incredibly harsh on some of these people because I have seen the dark side of these people selling what many could essentially call fairy tales, I guess it's important to recognize that they're filling. This is why it works, because they are filling our need to be amazed, our need to wonder, to ponder the possibilities of the universe and how we may not be alone in the universe. They're filling. The reason this works so well is based on human psychology. We need myths. We need these things to explain things we don't understand, to expand our horizons as to what is possible, to wonder about our own place in the universe. These are basic, fundamental human needs. And these myth makers know that we need that. And these myth makers provided that for many. And to this day, it's amazing to me that so many people, again, we talked about this, this animation we shared, it got 1 million views in a very short period of time. So these myth makers are filling a basic human need. And that, my friends, is why it works. Just as in ancient Greece, they needed myths to explain their place in the universe and how things worked. And so myths were created at some point by people, and myths were believed. And so much time has passed, and we've learned so much as a race, but we still need myths, and we still want to believe. And with that, friends, we will wrap up tonight's presentation. I'm going to take a moment to thank and recognize the live chat. Steve Long is here, another good researcher, because Lazar never said anything about 115, which wasn't already widely published in science mags in the 20 years prior, including Scientific American article, which came out a month before Bob did. Okay, there's an ongoing rage and debate. We'll cover that as a last piece before wrapping things up. There's always been this ongoing debate that Bob Lazar must be telling the truth because he predicted element 115 before it was real or anybody knew it was real. The existence of element 115 was long predicted by science and scientists. In fact, I have a high school chemistry book from, I think it's from 1980. I'll have to check on that. I'll show it on a future show. And in that 1980 book about chemistry, it includes element 115. It predicts element 115. So Bob Lazar picked element 115, and he claimed that's how the alien flying saucers worked, by creating some sort of antimatter reaction that released gravity waves. And it sounds good, but then we discovered element 115, and it doesn't do any of the magical things that Bob Lazar described, and it has a half-life of just milliseconds, I think, or tenths of a second. It doesn't stick around. It's not solid, as Bob Lazar described it. Now, people have claimed there could be other isotopes of it. Bob Lazar predicting element 115. Well, people predicted the existence of element 115 for years before Bob Lazar came out with his story. And of course, somebody did produce it in a lab. And again, it had none of the mystical, magical flying saucer fuel properties that Bob Lazar described. The mediator is here and says, if Knapp is a myth maker, then how come he was in Congress behind David Charles Grush, who was testifying in 2023 to do the basic same thing? You need help, Stephen. Maybe see a therapist. Yeah, I like the pushback, and it's okay. Do you know how many completely and totally fake stories that George Knapp has been involved in? Do you have any idea? Have you actually checked into, the veracity of other stories that he sold? Like, oh, I don't know, Batman balloons, right? Or this convicted pimp fake scientist, Bob Lazar. Yeah. It's a complete and total national embarrassment that he was sitting in Congress. It's a complete embarrassment to our government, and other governments are laughing at us because we let the two biggest UFO grifters in the United States sit there at a congressional hearing about UFOs. But well played on his part. Yeah, because it's because people like you who don't dig deeper into the fake stories that these people create, you don't dig deeper, so you don't know the history. But I forgive you for being ignorant and uninformed, right? Maybe you should actually research his history before you decide that he's not a myth maker. You know how you make myths? You take something as stupid as a Batman balloon and claim it's an alien spaceship. And George Knapp has done that. And let's not forget, oh man, are we really going to, look, how many times am I going to do this to George Knapp? But George Knapp tells ridiculous fairy tales about a lot of things, including the smoking dog men. It's, he famously sold a book that he claims was based on all this evidence, and then it turns out that he has no evidence. When he's pressed on evidence on Joe Rogan's show, oh, there is no evidence. So it's just interesting. And of course, I can never find those bumpers when I need them. But if you believe that George Knapp is credible, that's fine. What you're saying is that it's totally credible to sell a convicted pimp, bankrupt, fake scientist as a former government scientist. It's completely okay to do that in your eyes then, if you think he's credible. Do you think that the United States government, before sitting him in Congress in a hearing, knew that he spent 30 years selling a convicted pimp fake scientist with a murderer wife who just declared bankruptcy? Before he came out with his story, he sold that guy as a former government scientist for decades. Do you think they knew that? They would never have let him in if they knew that, because they were trying to do something serious there. But it is what it is. And of course, we should recognize and understand that Jeremy Corbell also cashed in on that story and helped create additional layers of the mythology. 1 second, I'm going to try to find the smoking dog men George Knapp stories is some of my favorite stuff. Like, you gotta love a guy who makes money telling people stories about smoking dog men at UFO conferences. And of course, he cashed in on the whole secret of Skinwalker Ranch stuff, which we have covered extensively here. I'm going to take some more comments and questions from the live chat before we wrap things up here. Still trying to find those. You know what the problem is I don't have, here is a great, this is by Stephen Greenstreet. Okay. Here is George Knapp and his promises of evidence that don't exist.
But no evidence of any kind to back up any of these stories has ever been presented. George Knapp who's built an entire career around stories of UFOs and the paranormal, and who was one of the authors of the Hunt for the Skinwalker book, was asked about evidence on the Joe Rogan show.
Because they weren't there with cameras. Is there any evidence? Like for the first 20 months when the rancher is there, they don't have any evidence because he's not a paranormal investigator.
At this point, Knapp begins telling more stories about UFOs on and near the ranch. Rogan then interrupts and asks again.
Again, is there any evidence?
No, not really.
Oh.
If you're looking for physical evidence and solid proof, and they don't have it.
Oh. Knapp saying there's no proof or evidence is quite strange, considering the book Knapp co-authored says this: "We obtained an intriguing body of physical evidence to support many of the accounts described in the book." Okay, so where is that intriguing body of physical evidence?
It doesn't exist. And that's the problem with George Knapp. But hey, if you think he's credible, I don't think anybody credible would be telling stories about dogmen. But here we are, and this is what these people that always think I'm so wrong. You know, it's important. Have facts in hand before putting mouth in gear. Would the United States Congress have wanted him sitting in a serious UFO hearing if they knew that he was selling stories like this for cash at UFO conferences?
Come down this dirt road one night and they see two figures, humanoid-looking figures, standing up with their backs to the road and looked like they were smoking cigarettes. They had trench coats on, smoking cigarettes, standing out on the road. These guys figure, what are these fellas up to? So they're pulling up and they shining their lights on the guys. And they turn around, and they were dogs.
Smoking dogs is so credible. But it's not just smoking dogs. There's other dog men.
She saw this standing on two legs, a wolf creature, a wolf standing in her yard, its paws crossed like this, leaning on a tree, staring back at her.
Dogmen. Yeah, incredibly credible. Yeah. All right. So I'm now all caught up on the live chat. Did I thank? I don't know that I thanked them. So let me thank William Runner. I apologize. We missed one. I missed one of those super chats. For those unaware, we read every single one and we thank every single person. Thank you, William Runner, longtime show supporter, for the kind and generous $10 super chat. We appreciate you, and thanks so much for appreciating us. I love it that there's people all over the world that still enjoy these strange and esoteric subjects, but they want the whole story. And what we have displayed for you tonight is we give you the other side of the story that's missing in the mythology, that peeling back those layers of deception and showing you the reality of these stories and how they're generated. But thanks, William Runner, longtime show supporter, for helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash.
All right, we've praised the cash well tonight. Thanks, all of you. I will take a moment and check in. Also, we take PayPal pledges, and we read every single one of those. If you send a PayPal, instructions are in the description of every video or podcast. Just be sure to add a note, and we want to thank Maria for a kind and generous $50 PayPal pledge. Longtime show supporter Maria, who's watching from South America, and just says, keep up the great work. Thanks for all you do. Thank you, Maria, longtime show supporter, for your kindness, generosity, and support. It is much, much appreciated. All right, so we'll get back to the live chat comments now. And I will answer any questions you have. Please put your questions or comments for me in all caps. It really, really does help. UFO Shane is here, who's a member. Thanks for being a member. Says they walked Knapp and Corbell in that Congress hearing like they were heroes. It was disgusting. Yeah. So there's two sides to every story, UFO Shane. We heard a user earlier sort of admonish me or, chastise me. How dare I call George Knapp a myth maker? The guy's running around telling stories about dog men, okay? Jeez. UFO Shane is correct. I was disgusted when I saw, not only were they given, they got reserved seating, right? Strange Recon is here and says they looked over and saw Dog the Bounty Hunter and they just cut off the rest. Yeah, interesting. Dino beavers are among us, says William Runner. And Stormcrow likes the smoking dogs. By the way, thanks to Stephen Greenstreet of the New York Post, he didn't even do anything with those. I stole them from him. I borrowed them. It's fair use. He does. He posts a lot of videos that he just puts on Twitter, and I think they're so important. And I'm aware, Stormcrow, that Stephen Greenstreet has a huge archive that I gotta remember to beg him again to let me in on. He has like all of George Knapp's talks at UFO conferences on video. They used to be on YouTube, but it seems like they've melted off over the years. And Greenstreet has them. I want them. I could make a lot out of that stuff. Yeah, and here we have Tales of the Sonic Voyage. Thanks for being a member. Says the moment I saw those two clowns at the hearing, I knew it was going to be a bogus waste of time and money. Yeah. Archaic Revival says, I hope he uses my comment. I said I have a cigar-shaped UFO boner. Yeah, and this mythology also gives people those disclosure boners, right? Did you ever see a Tony B title in Philly in the late Toy and B title in Philly in the late 90s? I'm not sure what you mean, Ganja. Toy and B title in Philly in the 90s? It doesn't ring a bell to me. We had KB Toys and Toys R Us. That's what we had. Yeah. The mediator seems to think there's no money to be made in grifting. Yeah, well, see, but here's the thing is, and listen, I'm glad for this, Sandra McDonald. By the way, thanks for being a member. We value all of our members, including you. Thanks for appreciating us. We appreciate you, Sandra. Listen, here's the issue is a lot of people come here and they're not fully educated. So it's fine. I'm not offended if somebody makes statements like that out of ignorance. But educate yourself. We have videos here. I just did one just shining a spotlight on the UFO money. And we can verifiably prove that people are making millions of dollars creating and selling and telling, and most importantly, selling these stories. We can demonstrably prove that people are making millions of dollars. So it is a factual statement that there's lots of money to be made in UFO grifting. And somebody that isn't aware of that just hasn't educated themselves and saw the evidence that we can clearly lay out here that there's literally millions of dollars being made. Zer Squid Lid says, Randy, the aliens are concerned you're not wiping your butt after using the restroom. That could be a problem. Yeah, Randy, there's no moderators in the live chat. If your comments are getting hidden, it's maybe you're hitting the filter. If you use profanity, maybe there's no moderator currently in the live chat. So there should be no comments being hidden unless it's being auto hidden by YouTube for whatever reason, filters or such. And by the way, interesting to point out that I think we've now survived 2 nights of it being like the Wild West. Like when I first started my show, people would come in here and call me a cocksucker. And eventually we got moderators, and some of those moderators were a little too heavy on the ban buttons and a little too heavy on the hiding people or muting people that said things they didn't like. We're back to a free speech zone here. There is no one right now that is deleting comments. I am the only person that has the capability of doing that, and I haven't done it through the whole show. So it's interesting. And Alga Ray is here and says, smoking dogs equals credibility. Yes. The mediator, what does that have to do with the congressional hearings you are playing? Listen, the mediator, we're up to, let me check. I don't want to give an inaccurate assessment. We're up to, let's see, days since June 5th, 2023. It's been 142 days of George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, Ross Coulthart, and others, including Jesse Michaels and this yes theory and grifting off of Grush. And there's zero evidence so far. None. Zero. There is zero evidence. We're up to 142 days. Oh, we're going to get the evidence this week. He's going to go to a skiff, but he needs money for a plane ticket, the mediator. And what does that have to do with congressional hearings? You're acting like he got placed at congressional hearings because he's some kind of goddamn hero, right? And some kind of credible journalist that's uncovering the truth. Would a credible journalist who's really uncovering the truth be taking a few hundred or a few $1,000s to tell stories about smoking dog men to UFO dorks at conferences for decades? Because that's what George Knapp's been doing. The mediator, educate yourself. Yes, you got to educate yourself. El Pachuco says, channeling UFOs via meditation. What a grift. If I remember correctly, Greer would charge $1,000 plus for his UFO mediation workshops. $5,000, I've heard some estimates. It's great. Nevada Maverick says, when he said smoking dogs, why didn't he specify the breed? Yes. And William Runner says, a few trolls in the live chat tonight, but they haven't been too bad. Yeah, isn't it interesting? Like, you know, people predict like, oh, if you don't have moderators, the whole live chat's going to fall apart. I mean, it's been fine. I do have to mention that yesterday, that guy William Pix owes me $20 or something like that, because I had to verbally assault him, and I knew it when I said it. Right? It was right in the beginning of the broadcast. The troll came in and called me a grifter. And by the way, I get called a grifter on a daily basis. I guess, you know, whatever. But today I detailed on Twitter two things. Somebody attacked me for wearing glasses again. So I'm going to, one second. Strange Recon Jeff, you've asked me a question on Twitter. Yes, absolutely, because it makes it a transformative work. And actually, let's make this a learning moment for everybody. We try to help educate other content creators as well. So Jeff from Strange Recon asks, animating this and putting it into a television frame, does that prevent a copyright claim? Yes, it helps to make the case that this is a transformative work, because you would not mistake my version of this video playing with the TV and the cool background with the original. So it makes it a transformative work. But also fair use, if you're using a video and you're using it to educate the public, that also qualifies under fair use. We like to make sure, for those unaware, when you play a video on YouTube, you can get a copyright strike or a copyright claim, and you won't be able to monetize your video and this and that. Yeah, one of the reasons that you'll always see me putting things in TVs. A few people have commented, like, what is that? Like, why are you always putting things in TV screens and weird backgrounds? It's to make it a transformative work, and this helps to cover us to say, hey, this is a transformative work. This is significantly changed from the original video. And we're also using it for educational purposes. We're also discussing the video. You've got to stop it every few seconds if you can and do some kind of commentary. If you do that, you have a very, very almost impenetrable case for fair use. And you will never, I have never lost a copyright claim here, not once. And we've had 25 of them over the past 3 years. I have very strong legal defense letters that argue fair use for the following reasons. This is different. It's changed from the original. It's a transformative work. I'm discussing the video. I'm critiquing the video. I'm educating the public with the video. All these things tip the balance of fair use. And really, you only need one of, to my understanding, you really only need one of those things to say fair use, but I make sure that we do all of them that we can so that we can make a very strong defense of fair use. I strongly believe in fair use. You have to let the little content creators use other material to create theirs. Yes, and great question. Randy, 1979, Vice Admiral Tiger says, Stephen, do you think there is still significant radiation at Groom Lake today? Well, several years ago, I checked in with the Atomic Energy Commission, and someone I talked to there, I'll have to dig out the source and find it, basically said you can only spend a few hours there before significant health risk, because the levels of radiation there are so high. And that was within a few years ago. It doesn't decay that fast. Yeah, and Strange Recon, if you want to talk to me off air, I'd be happy to guide you through some other things that I do. One of the things you could do is mirror the video. You just flip it. But that gets complicated if there's any writing in the video, because then the writing gets revert. Anyway, you got to make it different. So another thing that I usually do to make it transformative, Strange Recon, is I'll put music to it, because that's another layer. It's changed. It's not the same as the original video. You got to make an effort. And did you see what I did here, Strange Recon? No one can argue with me that we didn't make an effort to make it different than the original, so that they don't want somebody to be able to say that your version of it can be mistaken for their original version of it. So you have to change it, transform it in some way. And no one can argue when they see my version that it's significantly changed and different. There's a zoom, there's a different background, it's in a TV screen. Sometimes I'll add music. Today I didn't add the music that I would usually add because I just didn't have time. But again, all of those things argue fair use. We've never won. We've never lost a fair use claim that we've made. We've had people falsely copyright claim or strike us. We file the legal paperwork that I have developed, arguing fair use for all those reasons, and we're okay. We're allowed to do it. It's the same reason why, if you're watching CNN, you see them, you see that the big news, the big media companies do this all the time, Strange Recon. If you're watching CNN, they may play a clip from Fox News for a little while, but they change it up a little bit and then they talk about it. It's the same thing for them. It's fair use. Archaic Revival wants to know if I'm a cartoon. Not tonight. The worst offender would be, let's see. Yeah, if you're getting claims, you need to apply that. And then also, when I get a chance, I'll dig out my fair use legal defense letters, because they're very powerful. I've not lost a single case. And by the way, sometimes there's AI bots or whatever that will find the video where you used a video and claim it. You've got to be able to defend against that. Just stand strong in your fair use defense. And as long as you're doing fair use, as I've described, you're transforming it, you're talking about it, you're commenting over it, you're educating the public, and you're using it in that way, nobody can really argue. It's the textbook definition of fair use. And we rely on fair use here. I wouldn't have been able to, just so people are aware, I wouldn't have been able to produce tonight's presentation without fair use. We used documents I don't own the copyrights to. We used this S4 recreation. We used old news reports from George Knapp from 30 years ago. This is all fair use. And I need the ability to use those materials in order to produce presentations. Well, I don't need it. If I had unlimited money and unlimited resources, hey, I could have hired actors to play George Knapp and Bob Lazar and had them do a mock interview and all the, if you have unlimited resources, but as a small content producer, fair use is really the way to go. Steve Long says, appreciate you doing a Lazar review, Stephen. Like many topics, the most credible research on Lazar is typically available to read by BBC. Yeah, I keep saying Steve Long. In fact, I was talking to Michael Stratt about this. And by the way, I think Michael Stratt's going to come here and be a guest. We're still going to work it out. We're going to do for those that enjoyed that, we did I thought it was a great piece, a not so brief history of UFO crashes. And we did that, but we left out a great deal of material because there's so many UFO crash cases. I focused on just the most popular ones. 1 second. Somebody's sending me information. James Rink got fired from the Super Soldier program, according to someone. Okay, Super Soldier talk. Interesting here. Yeah, so I'm trying to find something that I sent to Mr. Schratt just earlier today. Oh, yeah. Okay, so let me share my screen. So I was talking to Michael Schratt earlier today, and one of the things we talked about is I did a history of UFO crashes from 1897 to 1965, but I left out all the Len Stringfield cases, and Michael Schratt is very knowledgeable about that. Those are the cases from like 1965 forward to present day, and more. Maybe. So we may be doing a part 2 to a history of UFO crashes. And I could think of no one better than Michael Schratt to do that with. And by the way, just to be clear, if people are getting the wrong idea, I expressed my, how can I say this politely? I don't know. I wasn't very happy that Michael Schratt was in a couple of documentaries by people that I think are garbage peddlers. But all in all, I like Michael Schratt as a person, and we get along really well. And, we just had UFO Shane here, and he was talking about like the concept that the best people are the people who can just agree to disagree on things. You may be an Elizondo fan, and I think he's a complete and total fraud, but we should still be able to have a civil discourse and work together or talk together or, explore topics together. And Michael Schratt is one of those people. I disagree with him strongly on many things, and I'm sure he disagrees with me strongly on many things, but there's many things that we have common ground on. So when we talk, or if we bring him here as a guest again, and I'm hopeful we'll be able to do that and work it out, we'll just talk about the things that we have common ground on. And if we disagree, we'll disagree politely and stay friends. I really like a lot of his artwork, his illustrations. The last book that he did is just incredible as far as like the artistic side of it, right? So yeah, we might get Michael Schratt back as a guest, maybe as early as tomorrow. I have to confirm with him. If not tomorrow, then soon. And we want to try to bring you those really good, high quality guests that are really worth tuning in for. I have to tell you that, I've been sort of slacking on the guest thing because, again, it's just a time constraint. Like, it takes time to get the guest, get the good guest, get a good concept for a show you can work on with the guest or do with the guest and get it together. And I do have to say that we've had this run, man, of just bad juju. That's what I call it. That's, like somebody comes out and the old friend comes out and stabs you in the back, and then somebody else is pissed off at you. And like people have been really slinging arrows at myself and my show for weeks now. But I think we're past that. And by the way, of course, that stuff is a distraction. The distraction, it's like throwing me off of my game. Like now I have people saying this shit about me. Now I have people saying this shit about me. And most of it we've addressed and we're just moving on from it. And then of course we get this Corey Good drama. Let's see, now we had the moderator drama. And by the way, just to be clear, I wish everybody the best. I don't bear any ill will. I'm not pissed off at any of the moderators because, of all this stuff that was happening. But I'm not going to allow anybody to tell me who I can or can't have on as a guest. And really, it's like the mod wars. You know, these moderators would get in fights with each other, and then I'm supposed to mediate disputes. And there's just too many disputes. They're always fighting about something stupid that I don't care about. Like literally on September 3rd, a lot of this stuff kicked off. And it's almost the end of October here. It's October 25th, and up until a few days ago, people are still in the Discord arguing with me, expecting me to take sides, ban this person, don't ban me, I was the good guy in this situation, and all of this other stuff. And like, I don't have time to do the show, let alone like stepping in and mediating some dispute. And by the way, they got in an argument over a goddamn movie on September 3rd. And all this fighting has been going on all this time over that shit. Like, that's important. There's people being murdered every day. There's 2 huge wars going on. There's better things to worry about than an argument about a movie. That bull. And remember, it's just all this stuff is coming in succession at me at once. And I'm human. I get overloaded, and I got overloaded. I got people attacking me, saying X, Y, or Z because of that one guest situation. People attack me over the Corey Good situation. Now the moderators are all fighting, and I'm supposed to jump in and mediate disputes that are really ridiculous disputes. And, no matter how much I say, like, just get along. Like, I don't have time for this, and I'm sorry. I really am sorry that I don't have time to mediate your month-old dispute about an argument you all got into over a movie, right? And I'm not taking sides. And then it also, all this stuff cripples the show. Like, then more drama got started because one of those people involved in those arguments came on the panel, but I'm not supposed to have that guy because he said nasty things to one of the other people complaining, right? And how dare you? And all, like, what am I supposed to do? It's an open panel. So now I got to ban people that people have disagreements with? I'm not doing that. I'm just not doing that. So now we're kind of past all of this stuff, but I just wanted to mention, I've been kind of honestly off my game. Just not really executing this show the way it deserves to be executed because I'm distracted by all these slings and arrows constantly coming at me. One of the things that helped is that I completely and totally disconnected from Twitter. Because I'm going to just, let's lay it on line here. I'm always honest with my audience, so let me be honest about some things. I take so much abuse on Twitter from certain people. And, it's always the same stuff, attacks on my appearance, or, saying that I'm running my own grift, covering the grifters. And, so, hey, congratulations to this idiot, what's her name? Leisha Carey Wyatt. Yeah, so we'll talk about this. Congratulations, you're a freak wearing shades indoors at night. Now. And I informed her rather unkindly. I called her the C word, which I'm not going to say here because of the YouTube algorithm. I said, no, you dumb C. She's a woman. I have a paralyzed eye and I wear glasses for medical reasons, but maybe there's some disabled kids in wheelchairs that you could go make fun of. And I get it. Some people just don't know that I wear the glasses because I have a paralyzed eye. Are you happy? And now you can call me One-Eyed Willie. You can call me a one-eyed son of a bitch. You could say all those things, right? Those hurtful, nasty things. I can't do anything about my eye. And it's been like this for years. It's the result of a life-altering brain aneurysm, a life-threatening brain aneurysm. I almost died in a hospital. They had to do brain surgery to repair the aneurysm, which is behind that paralyzed eye. No, I can't do anything, you dumb C. I can't do anything about that. So, you can attack me for a physical disability. Like, this is the level of nastiness that I deal with on Twitter. And by the way, I just re-engaged on Twitter starting this week. I took like 2 weeks off of Twitter. It was the quietest, most, I just didn't get pissed off all the time. Like, here's this stupid woman who doesn't know anything about me taking a shot at my physical disability, right? And by the way, I could show you 100 more examples like this of the hateful, nasty, vengeful people that are constantly slinging these arrows at me. And if it's not my appearance, it's something else about me. You're making money, Steven. You're a grifter too. And even if I will show you my goddamn spreadsheets, we make like 1% of the grifters we cover, right? So if I'm a grifter, I'm the dumbest goddamn grifter there ever was, because I decided, you know what? We're going to do this the hard way. I'm not going to sell fake stories about aliens like everybody else and make millions of dollars. I'm going to expose the fraud, the abuse, and all of the fake stories, and I'll just take 1% of the money instead of all of the goddamn money. Who would do that on purpose? It's the stupidest argument I've ever heard in my life. Maybe, just maybe, I've heard all the horror stories of people that have been taken advantage of, lied to, abused, used, manipulated, sucked dry for every penny they have by some of these grifters. And maybe I have a problem with people spreading disinformation, misinformation, false information, completely fake information, completely fake stories. And for whatever reason, I decided to do this the honest way and do something about it. If you want to attack me for that, and I sell t-shirts, right? Yeah, I could show you. I think last month I made $22 in total in merchandise sales. Like, really? Like, if this is a grift, I'm terrible at it. But let me be very, very clear. We are very blessed here. We're doing great as a show doing this the honest way. Who's ever done it the honest way? You don't do it the honest way if you want to make money. But this is where we're at, and this is where we're at ourselves. This is where we're at, and this is where we find ourselves. Mark Tehran is here and says there's no money in the truth. Yeah, and Charlie Phillips is here and says ufology is a cult. Anyone who goes against their belief, they attack. It's sad. Yeah, I agree. Strange Recon, I love using the C word. I don't know if it triggers the algorithm, but you know what, Jeff? All of our videos, that's another issue here. All of our videos get demonetized. No matter how much I don't curse, no matter, and lately, it's before the stream even ends. We'll check in with that right now to see if we're demonetized already. No, the monetization is still on right now. Once I end the broadcast, it'll probably go away. Here, I'll show this as channel content. So, yeah, you see these two? These two got demonetized. This one was confirmed by manual review as not suitable for most advertisers. And this is on George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, monetized. Government wackadoos waste $22 million. We gave a factual report about what really happened with that $22 million. That's not suitable for ads. And it was confirmed by manual review. That's not suitable for ads. That report, I stand by 100%. It's completely and totally real and factual information. That's not suitable for ads. But do you know what is? Do you know what is suitable for ads on YouTube? What is suitable for ads on YouTube is selling Batman balloons as alien spacecraft, right? Yeah, that's okay. You can make money on that. But when you do real or factual research and tell people the truth behind these mythoses and mythical fake stories, that's not suitable for ads. So we are getting penalized for actually giving people the truth instead of lying to them with fake stories. You gotta love it. And someday, Jeff, I'm going to address that in an open letter to the YouTube CEO. I'm keeping a spreadsheet of all this shit. this is why it's also important to support the content creators, and not just me, all of them. If you really like a content creator, join the Patreon, throw them a couple bucks, become a member, do something, because they're not here for the YouTube dollars when this stuff keeps happening. Yeah, confirmed by manual review. Yeah. Yeah, and Strange Recon says, I've been really trying to not see it trip. I've been beating the demon. Yeah, that's another content creator. That's how we feel here on some platforms. It's a broken system. Yeah, fraud is suitable for ad revenue. Sure, right? Yeah, the mediary. Don't worry about monetization. You don't get views. Yeah, okay. Do you know where is your channel? I always love it when somebody is you know what? Let's see your show. I've gotten 1.3 million views since I started this show. Right? 1.3. We had to remove 179,000 views or 200,000 views when we removed a whole bunch of videos about a certain topic. We lost 200 to 250,000 views. But that still leaves us at over 1 million views. So you're telling me I don't get any views. Let me see your channel that got more than 1 million views. Can I see that? You know, maybe this Wild West thing is a good thing, because now the moderators won't try to help me by suddenly, deciding to mute people like you, the mediator, because I don't mind. You just joined YouTube in June and you have no videos. Are you the arbiter of who gets views or not, the mediator? Can you show me your YouTube channel where you got over 1 million views doing a show where you're your own show host, your own researcher, your own video editor, your own graphics person? There was at times when I had help with that. I'm a one-man army. Let me see you do better. Or are you just one of those bitter, angry, critical little losers that hides behind fake names on the internet with brand new accounts to come and take shots at people who are succeeding at something you've never succeeded at? I think you're one of those people, the mediator. That's what I think. Don't tell me what I'm doing wrong. Prove me wrong. If you tell people the truth, how come congressmen, government whistleblowers, and aviators all contradict you? Well, I guess that's a good question, right? So what? It's me against all those people, right? It's me somehow against all those people. And what congressman? Tim Burchett, a wackadoo, right? Who believes there's aliens in the Bible? And what naval aviators? You mean grifters that have been living off of UFO money for years? Those naval aviators, right? You got a lot to learn, dude. And by the way, it'll also be my policy going forward that if you're some fake nameless coward who just started a YouTube video or YouTube channel, or just started a YouTube account, or just started a Twitter account so you can come here and slag me, not interested. Come here with a real name and a real face. Don't be a pussy. Don't be a coward, right? You got a lot to say. Come and say it to my face like a man. Or are you going to hide behind sock accounts, right? For all we know, that's another of Lou Elizondo's sock puppet accounts, right? Stormcrow. Why do people making up stories contradict me? Yes. People making up stories who never prove anything, who have no evidence. We're at 145 days, the mediator. Where's Grush? Figuring out the grift. That's what he's doing. Tales of the Sonic Voyage. We all know congressmen and media and government people are 100% honest now, don't we? Yeah, I agree. And Luis Caetano, we greet our mothers with that phrase, you mad C word. Yeah, wise monkey. Mine's classified, but I won't slate you. Yeah, I don't mind you. You're one of the mild ones. Wise monkey is like, I'm just trying to figure this shit out. I'm listening to everybody, and I'm like, okay, that's a fair assessment. He's okay, and he's one of those people that I can disagree with, right? Local says, I'm not watching this live right now, but I am at the start of this broadcast, and it's a really good UFO history lesson. Good info. Thank you, Local 556. And I want you to come and be a guest here, but I don't know what we're going to talk about. I think I'd like to talk, you would be like the military person to explain some of this stuff. Maybe we could do a show about special access projects, unacknowledged special access projects, and possible military explanations for some of the UFO sightings, like DARPA projects and black budget projects and stealth blimps and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and that's a real problem. Steve Long says mediator still can't tell the difference between stories and verifiable evidence. Yeah. And by the way, mediator, we have an 8-year plus track record of getting stories factually correct, factually accurate. We've got an incredible track record on good research, good factual information here. Your grifting UFO heroes are always getting caught selling 100% fake stories. And if you won't at least acknowledge that that statement is true, then no amount of debate with you is worthy of any time. Because that's a fact. Your UFO grifter heroes get caught selling completely fake stories all the time. George Knapp has, Jeremy Corbell has, Ross Coulthard has. So, there's a difference between somebody that has an 8-year track record of getting stories factually accurate. For the most part, we've done a few retractions and things, but I stand by our work here. There's a huge difference between somebody with an 8-year track record of factual reporting and somebody that gets caught selling fake alien stories constantly. Tales of the Sonic Voyage, thank you for a kind and generous $5 super chat. And also, thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and support. And we want to take a moment to acknowledge, thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for the support, the people listening on the audio podcast, the people that are Patreon supporters, the people that are sending super chats, Pill.net Gold Pillars, Twitch subscribers, YouTube channel members, super chatters. We want to thank every one of you, and thanks for reminding me to have that attitude of gratitude, Tales of the Sonic Voyage. Thankful for all your help. I want to thank each and every one of you for appreciating what we do here, and we appreciate all of you for helping us to praise the cash. God knows I need it. Praise it, bitches.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your generosity. Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Thank you very, very much. We appreciate all of you. William Runner, nothing is going to change. UFO priests have control over his mind. Yeah. And you know what's funny though, William Runner? Do you know how many times somebody comes in to my live chat to slag me angrily and nastily and like they're totally convinced, right? Right? And so then they come back a year later, maybe 6 months, something. Most of the time, it's a year or more later. They come back, and I've had these people apologize to me because when they get tired of chasing the carrot on the stick and the constant promises of revelations to come that never come, they have this moment and they realize that I was right. Right? I will wait for it. More slags. You make more money from donations on your show than Bob Lazar makes selling T-shirts. How do you know? Do you know how much money Bob Lazar makes selling his garbage? And Bob Lazar has tried to cash in at every moment he could. He's got a new documentary film deal. He got a book deal in the 6 or 7 figures for a book that John Lear says he didn't write. It must have been written by a ghostwriter, not Bob Lazar. It was published by Tom DeLonge. You remember him. He ran the TTSA Techno Scam where he collected $2 million from everybody and promised everybody a spaceship, right? No, I'm sure that Bob Lazar is making much more money than me selling his fake story. He's been selling it for 30 years. And here's where you're not educated, because Bob Lazar cashed in and sold a VHS tape in the back of science magazines. Then he cashed in with a tester's model deal where he got paid a big upfront amount of money and then a royalty for every model that was sold of that S4 Sport model, flying saucer model. And I was told by Rust-Oleum Incorporated, who owned Tester's Model Corporation, that millions of those things were sold, right? Millions of those models were sold. There was a time in the early 90s when they were in every toy shop, every toy and hobby, every Toys R Us, every train shop that sold models. They were everywhere. Millions of those models were sold. He cashed in big time. Now, he claims that he didn't make any money from the Jeremy Corbell documentary, but people have said that there was a workaround for that. I don't know if that's true. Then he gets a 6 or 7 figure book deal, and he bought a $500,000 property right after the book deal. Now he's got a new documentary deal in place. I'm sure he's getting paid for that. He got $25,000 for one speaking engagement. So, you know, how long do you want to keep this up? It's easy when you're arguing with an ignorant idiot. It's easy to win. You're not good enough for this yet. Come back, you know, go learn some things and educate yourself, and then come back here and try to slag me. Because if you're slagging me from ignorance and you don't know what you're talking about, this is too easy. It's like, there's no challenge to it, you know? Maybe I need better trolls. We need some better trolls around here. These trolls are piss poor. Tonight's trolls get a failing grade for being misinformed idiots that are brainwashed by the people that are doing the grift. We need better trolls here. These trolls are terrible. We've had such better trolls than you. You can't even troll right, dude. Knob jockey. I agree, Shane Campbell. Yes. Charlie Phillips says, so does Fravor believe he saw aliens or new secret tech? Pretty sure he stated he thought it was black tech, which it was. Yeah, there's various reports that he did say it wasn't aliens, it was black budget technology. Luis Caetano says, how many UFO grifters does it take to lay out the dinner table? 9, 1 for each saucer. That's a terrible joke, but we'll allow it, Louis. Remember that grifters can lie much faster than you can fact check, says Paul Shields. Yes, and there is a whole concept about this, that the amount of energy it takes to dispel BS is hundreds of times more than it takes to create it. In other words, it's much easier to create BS than it is to prove it is BS. And that's a problem that we run into oftentimes here, right? Yeah. Hank McGurk is here and says, it's a beautiful day. Jesus Christ is Lord. You know, Hank, I've been doing some strange research into spirituality, including Islam. You know, I'm trying to understand the Muslim people better because of current world events and things. And boy, I'm getting quite an education about how flawed that whole religion is, based on, you know, we're going to do a whole show on it, but there's a Christian minister who rips them apart about the just outright lies they tell people about their religion, and how, you know, it was hundreds of years after their prophet that anything was written down, and it's very flawed. And it reminded me of how sort of, you know, the Bible has firsthand accounts, if you believe the stories of how the Bible was written, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, firsthand accounts of knowing Jesus, you know, and working alongside him. It's very different in the Muslim faith. It seems very disconnected from the original source material. But anyway, we'll allow that too, Hank McGurk. Thanks for being here. Charlie Phillips says, TTSA, another CIA compromised organization. Yeah. Yeah, he did. He did. Do you know how many thousands of copies he sold? Again, you have no education in this. You don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And you look childish and stupid and foolish because you keep repeating completely factually inaccurate information. For years, he sold that in ads in the back of Science magazine, including Popular Science. Yeah. Again, you're so stupid. Look at this. But yeah, there's no money in that. Do you know how much one of those models is going for? Let me see. Do you know how much one of those models is going for? I think they sold for like $25 a piece back in the day, and they sold millions of, according to Rust-Oleum, who I have an on-the-record source from, they sold millions of copies. So what would the wholesale price for that be? $12? If they sold millions of copies and the wholesale price for it is $12 and the shops would sell it for around $25 at the time, that would mean they made at least $12 million. Testor's Model Corporation. No money in that. No, you can't do third grade math, dude. Get out of my live chat. We need better trolls. This clown can't do third grade math, and he wants to argue with me about how much money is in the Testor's. Come on, dude. Don't know what you're talking about. Storm Crow with a kind and generous $10 Australian. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Says keep calling the grifters out, Steve. I believe I will. Well, we need better trolls. This mediator guy, he sucks at this. He just sucks at this. I'm reading more of his comments, and I'm not going to share any more of them because I don't. It's like. When you're with a group of friends and there's one of them that keeps saying stupid, silly things, you don't want to encourage that, right? This troll sucks. This is actually, if I had to rate chat room trolls, this is the worst chat room troll we've had in years. It's just he's terrible at this. Amy Collins says it costs $100,000 plus to make a mold for a typical kit's production. They are not going to produce them unless they think they're going to sell 1 million of them. Yeah, I agree with you. Patty says Mattel made the Barbie doll. Lots of bucks there, and the older ones are valuable. Yeah, those S4 models are going for like $100 on eBay if you can get one still. Yeah. Hank McGurk says, no, that's fourth grade math. No, it's not. It's probably third grade or first grade math. It's just 12 times millions. So they made $12 or $24 million on that probably, minus production expenses for the mold and whatever. But yeah, John says, do it better. Yeah, Local is laughing at the bad troll. Yeah, you are so dumb. I did it. I shared another one. There's verifiable information and proof about that. Yeah, this guy knows nothing. He hasn't even researched. This is the perfect example of you do not put mouth in gear until you have facts in hand. You were wrong about everything that you said because you're not informed and you didn't research things before you spout nonsense. So, there exists information from John Andrews that came through Michael Schratt. Maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. And we'll have him educate you on how much money Bob Lazar made on that deal, right? I love that this guy's so uninformed, misinformed, malinformed, disinformed, but he's gonna argue with somebody that has been closely studying all of this stuff since 1989. Okay, good luck to you. We need better trolls. This guy sucks. Send in the trolls. Come on. I like that. It makes the show livelier. if there's a lot of stupid people here, you know. We have a very intelligent audience by and large. I'm very blessed. We have very smart people here. But these true believer trolls, man, there's some stupid people. I could act the part of the troll better than some trolls. Wouldn't want to, though. Well, thank you for that, right? Yeah, and Wise Monkey says, I wish I was a pound behind Lazar, the Napster, Jezza, and company. Yeah, even Christopher Mellon doesn't buy into Lazar or Eric Davis. Yeah, exactly. William Runner says, that's why I ignore or block folks like that. They can't be reasoned with. They're a distraction. Yeah, you're right, mediator. Let me know how that works out. Let me know, right? We're getting disclosure this week, you dummy, right? You dummy! That's just the latest carrot on the stick, you dummy. Oh, they're going into a skiff. We're going to get the proof of aliens now. Sure we are. You dummy, you fell for it. You are, listen, they go for stupid people. They sell these stories so that stupid people believe it. Congratulations. You're one of their stupid people. You're one of their stupid people. You're doing a great job being an idiot, low information consumer of fake information that is worthless and meaningless, you dummy. But hey, best of luck to you on your disclosure there. Rain Dimensions, by the way, never underestimate the allure of clout. Some people spin a tale just for the notoriety. Of course, in the UFO space, they're going to say coming out was bad for them. Yeah, they're always the reluctant hero, Rain Dimensions, right? William Runner offered this guy, this bad troll, $1,000 that nothing new under the sun would happen. Crickets. Yeah. Let's all sing when the trolls come marching in. You know, I'm glad this moderator thing happens because I'm sure that with the old system, somebody would have just muted that guy because he's, you know, talking nonsense over and over and over again. There's 10 statements he made that were completely and totally factually wrong, right? Somebody would have muted him in our old system. But hey, it's the Wild West now. We have no moderators. So it's just like when we started. People can come here and be as stupid as they want. I used to be the mediator, I understand. Luckily, I wasn't on UFO Twitter in those days, or I might still be like that. Yeah. There is no evidence. It's 143 days, and there's no evidence of David Grush. You could say whatever you want. He hasn't provided any evidence, and we're at 142 days. It's going to be 6 months soon, and still we've got no evidence. So what are you going to say, true believers? What are true believers going to say after this week? If he testifies in a skiff and there's real proof and it doesn't leak out, that means his entire story is worthless and meaningless. You get that, right? You understand that. That if he testified even in a skiff between congressmen, senators, ICIG, congressional aides, senatorial aides, and he showed real smoking gun evidence or proof of alien visitation on Earth, that would leak. That would leak. They couldn't keep that. They wouldn't keep that secret. No, somebody would leak it to the press. So if after tomorrow we don't get proof of alien visitation on Earth, then David Grush is just another in a long line of UFO fairy tale hucksters calling themselves whistleblowers, whose only evidence so far has been a completely and totally fake UFO case from Mussolini's Italy that was told by a complete and total bullshit huckster, fairy tale huckster that's been involved in other fake UFO and alien stories. That's his only evidence so far, and it's fake. So if after tomorrow we don't get, on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC, everybody reporting Dave Grush finally comes through with the proof of alien life and visitation on Earth, then we know that Dave Grush is full of it. But don't worry. They'll come up with excuses for why that doesn't happen, and we still don't get proof after tomorrow. And then they'll be chasing the next carrot for stupid people. Keep chasing that stupid person carrot. They ought to just, get the big carrot and write idiots on it and just run around in front of these true believing idiots. Just keep chasing the carrot. Disclosure's coming any day now. No, it's not. People have been saying this shit for decades. And if it wasn't Grush, it was Bob Lazar. If it wasn't Bob Lazar, it was Lou Elizondo, who ran an imaginary Pentagon UFO program in the land of make-believe and lied to the New York Times, never proved anything. Or Bob Lazar, who never proved anything. Or, I'm forgetting all the so-called UFO whistleblowers. We did a whole series of 14 of them. All of them before Grush all came along, claimed that they had secret insider knowledge, and they were blowing the whistle, and none of them ever proved anything. Philip Corso didn't prove it. Bob Lazar didn't prove it. None of them proved any of it. And tonight we saw some more of them. Dan Burish never proved anything, right? The Connor O'Ryan Area S4 guy never proved anything. But this time it's different. Sure, it's going to be different, right? And again, you're misinformed. I do not live in the woods. I have a cabin in the woods. Do you know how stupid and ignorant you sound when you keep saying completely factually wrong things to support your arguments? It's pretty funny to me. Like, how dumb do you want to appear in front of a live audience of 100 or hundreds of people? Because you look pretty dumb right now. Grush doesn't necessarily believe he's telling lies. It's called manipulation. Yeah. Charlie Paris said, jail for what? Telling stories that haven't been verified. What's been verified is that he was an Air National Guardsman who had a drinking problem. Yeah, and he also spent time in a mental institution! Mediator, you dummy! Congratulations! You think you're getting disclosure from a goddamn mental patient! I love it! I love it! Steve Long says, I don't believe anything when they're claiming things that go against all known accepted science and knowledge. I agree with you. Yeah. So, to wrap up, I wanted to mention that we've been taking all these slings and arrows here, and not from people like this troll clown. He is the worst. This guy sucks at this. No, but real slings and arrows and really vicious, nasty attacks against me as a person, my ethics, people questioning my ethics or my motivations, people questioning, the originality of our show here, like as if I owe somebody something, I ripped somebody off, some butthurt people, whatever. Then we have this mod situation with all these arguments and people want me taking sides and more attacks and more attacks and more attacks for the past several weeks. I got to tell you, it shook me up a little bit, right? And I feel like I lost my mojo there for a minute, but I'm here to tell you, I feel like that is passing us by and we're just moving past that. And then, I also got YouTube literally yelling at me every time I log into YouTube that my views are down, right? Maybe you should produce more content. Maybe you should pay me more, bitches. Maybe these bitches should pay me more before they tell me I should spend more time on this. That's where I've just reached a healthy middle ground here. If you pay me more, I'll work more. But if you're not going to pay me, stop bitching at me that my views are down and I should produce more content. No. Oh, but that does remind me. This weekend, we're trying something brand new because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we'll be running reruns. It's something we want to try. Another content creator told me that I should own my time slot. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you're only on 3 or 4 days a week, sometimes 5 days if you're really working or busy or grinding that week, but you leave those other 2 days. And I'm like, what do you mean? Run reruns? Yeah, just run reruns. Run your favorite of your shows from your, 500 or 1,000 show history. So that's what we're going to start doing. And just to be clear, it's an experiment. So we premiere those at 9 p.m. There'll be a live chat, but know and understand, because I know somebody will complain if they're reruns. I've labeled them TS Classics. They're some of my favorite shows. And we already ran one. We'll be running. So every night from now on, whether I'm really here live or it just looks like I am, but you'll know because it'll say TS Classics on it. We'll be here every night at 9 p.m. going forward for at least the next several weeks. We're going to try this and see if it improves income and it improves the view situation. It helps us expand our show. I think it will. So we're going to try it. Hank McGurk says, just looking stupid, the best kind. I loves God people. I repent for the awful things I did back in the day. Well, that's heavy. People are wrong because they assume, speculated, believed way more often than they're just lying. Yeah. Yes, Randy says, Truthseekers has gone into syndicated reruns. Well, here's the thing, Randy. That other content creator reminded me that everybody misses the archive here. Now, that's a broad statement. Not everybody misses the archive of all these shows that we have here. Some of you go through them, man. I know at least a few people that are like, hey, man, I started at the beginning. I'm having a great time. I'm watching every show since you started, trying to catch up. There's thousands of hours of great content. I think a lot of it is great content. Hey, to be honest, some of those shows are mediocre. I'm not going to rerun the mediocre runs. I'm going to run the ones that I think are really good and high quality and also stand the test of time. And we're going to try to generate some more revenue because praise the cash, bitches. I need the money. So, and if anybody is going to attack me for doing this, you're not paying the bills here. I am. And we need more money for various projects, different things. I'll release more details about that later, right? And Local says that's a good idea. I scrolled through some of your old vids here and there. Anyways, you've got some really informative vids in the archive that are super pertinent still for today. Yeah, and I agree with you. So based on this other content creator's recommendation, I'm going to try to monetize my old monetized video. We're going to try to generate some income with the better of the shows. And again, I'll freely admit, I was trying to figure this show out for a while. And we had some shows that I thought were tremendously well done, well produced, well researched, or just very informative or very educational or very entertaining, some of them. And then we had ones that were terrible. I promise you, I'm going to try. I'm not going to play the terrible ones. I'm going to play the ones that I think were good. And Operation Shutdown, praise the cash, bitches. So we're praising the cash on reruns now. And and I'm getting slagged again. Show me your 1,000 show archive, the mediator, whatever the hell your fake name is. Show me some of your shows out of a 500 or 1,000 show archive, and none of them are mediocre. You can't. I'm being honest. Some of them were not very good. I try, but listen, let me be very clear. I always tried my best. I'm human. Sometimes you're going to fail. Even if you're putting fourth grade effort and you're doing your best, some things fall short. And I've been an artist for most of my life in one form or another. I recognize that's just the way art works. Picasso didn't paint $1 million painting every time he tried. Some of his were mediocre. Same goes for songwriters. You ever notice that? Sometimes you'll hear somebody that's an incredible songwriter and they make one album that's amazing. And then their subsequent albums just aren't very good. It's like they lost their spark or their passion, or that some of their stuff just wasn't good. It fell short. Doesn't mean they didn't try. Just means some things hit and some things miss. I'm okay with that as long as I do my best and try. Get your old Elizondo videos back up and running. Yeah. Some people are in support of this idea, and some people want to come here and chat more. I've heard a lot of that, but I can only be live so much. And the other thing I'm going to say too is I'll try to be in the live chats, but remember the point of a rerun, like Howard Stern best of, he wasn't sitting there typing to the viewers while he was running the best of. He was doing other things. Like, is it okay that I go take my kid to the movies? Is it okay that I take him fishing or I spend time with my wife? We haven't had date night in like 3 years, man. We used to do that. We used to have like date night every week. We'd make some time for each other. Yeah, I'm done taking nasty comments from you. I have an 8-year track record of honest reporting. Go compare that to your heroes. And while you're at it, get in there and lick those buttholes, bro. Get in there and lick those UFO celebrity buttholes, because they've all been caught selling fake stories multiple times. Maybe you should go bust their balls and leave me alone, because I have an 8-year track record of getting the stories factually correct that we put here, or doing my very best to give people all sides of the story, even if it's a strange and mysterious subject matter. Wear the backlash like a badge of honor. Those critics are just that. Yeah, I learned a long time ago, Patty. Critics are people, usually they're people who failed at what you're doing, right? I loved music critics. We had like, I loved music critics because they were usually people that have never written a song in their entire lives, but somehow they're qualified to critique me or any other songwriter who did put their balls on the line and show people songs they'd written, recorded, and produced. Critics are usually bitter, angry, jealous people who failed at things, right? Gabber Beast TV is here. Welcome, my Australian friend. Says, Stephen, you need to run your own skiff so that you can get back to the bottom of this Grush story. Yeah, you can keep typing nasty stuff, dude. Prove it. Prove I lied to my audience. You can't, because you're piss poor at this, and if you're just a clown in here repeating talking points of the grifter selling the fake stories, everybody in here knows that you're an idiot, and like you're not doing yourself any favors, right? Oh, that show host I haven't heard from. Yeah, thanks. Local is saying my track record is spot on, dude. Was he wrong? He's right, buddy. Yeah. And by the way, if I don't know for sure that a story is fake, then we explore it as a mystery. I love great mysteries, right? I can't see that guy, says blank one. Props, Stevo, every time, all the time, bro. Yeah, thanks for being here. We appreciate you. Chris Johansson, by the way, we want to take a moment and thank all of you people. We'll thank all you super chatters again, especially Chris Johansson. Praise the cash, bitches! Look at that one, $150. Thanks, Chris Johansson. We appreciate you. Richard Crawley, kind and generous $6.99 super sticker. We had TL with a kind and generous $4.99. We've got Tales of the Sonic Voyage, who's also a member, kind and generous $5. William Runner, a 10 spot. Thank you very much. And Tales of the Sonic Voyage twice. So a 10 spot. And Stormcrow, thank you all for your kindness, generosity, and support. And of course, Maria, who sent a kind and generous PayPal pledge. We love those. And by the way, we do like to encourage, I want to thank Chris Johansson, but we do like to encourage people to use PayPal. If you're sending a big chunk like that, they take a hell of a lot less. But we'll take it, though. It's fine. Thank you, Chris Johansson, for your kindness, your generosity, and support, and all of you. So I thought we were going to do this in 2 hours. I got wrapped up with arguing with a troll, but sometimes that's fun, right? Oh, and Local 556, throwing down the last one. We appreciate you. Some extra support, brother. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. big show supporter. And Local 556 is like a great untapped resource. He's got a lot of shit to say, and he hasn't said it yet. So we're going to bring him here and make him spill the tea. It's going to be great. Yeah. And by the way, no progress on that big story, Local 556. I'm hitting brick walls, but I'm getting ready to wrap it up. I think I'm going to wrap up that story next week and start putting together a broadcast about it. For those unaware, I'm working on the biggest fraud case I've ever seen in my life. And I have been working on that case for some time. We'll be doing a very special show about that very, very soon. Logical minds who have been saying this doesn't smell right need to band together. Yeah, well, we're trying. Randy says David Wilcock needs a pee bath. I nominate the mediator. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I do have to say that I'm not above muting or banning people. Like, if you're just going to come here and be nasty, if you want to actually engage, maybe you should have facts in hand before putting mouth in gear, right? Yeah, and Ardent Paranormal Hero says, thanks everyone for being here tonight, and thanks for being a member. We appreciate you. Thanks for appreciating us. Yeah, and those are the people. Steve Long is right. This person is not interested in discussion or debate, just trolling. Yeah, if you just want to keep personally insulting me, I will delete you. We'll ban your ass, right? You could come back with another fake account next week that you just made on YouTube to troll me. Coward, faceless coward, right? Yeah, blank one says block and move on. Don't give them air. Well, sometimes it's fun, especially when the guy's wrong about everything he said, right? Just completely and totally wrong about everything he said. Yeah, maybe, you know what we'll do? Since we have no moderators anymore, I'll put a poll up and I'll let the live chat decide if somebody should be muted or banned from the channel, right? Mark Tirana reminding everybody, if you like Steven's work, please like, share, and subscribe. Watch another one of his videos. Everything helps. Yeah. Yeah. Tales of the Sonic Voyage. Goofy times here. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Every time somebody's critical, I say, show me your show. I've never had another show host come here and say nasty things about my show. It's always some nameless, faceless, brand new account that has shit. He doesn't have anything to show, right? But he's an expert on everything. Yes, you're right. Arrows, Andy. There is definitely a dip in the mood from attacking the grift. No pointing and telling the magician he's fake and spoil the act. Yeah, there is something to be said for that, right? Steve Long, get him. Steve Long says he left you unblocked and spouting nonsense for 3 hours straight and responded to your post, but he can't take the heat. Yeah, it's so stupid, right? Billy Hicks is here and says it's okay, bro. Steven's a great guy and has been doing this long enough to have much patience for true believers. Look, dude, I believe a lot of this too, but it's mostly fake stories. Sorry. Yeah, I only like echo chambers. That's why I let you bitch and cry like a little spoiled child for 3 hours, because I only like echo chambers. My God, I'm getting out of here. We need better trolls. Can somebody get us better trolls, right? Yeah. Yeah. Just, it's like arguing, what's that saying? Don't argue with an idiot. He'll beat you with experience, It is what it is. Yeah. So we have done our due diligence, but I want to be sure to remind you that of a few things. I forgot to play the begging bumpers, so you know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. And also be sure to throw some money at me, because praise the cash, bitches, right? Throw some money at me. Join my Patreon, bitches. Don't be a leech. I know a lot of you leeches just come here and take this shit for free. You can give me $1. The Patreon is only $1. And brother, if you can't spare $1, I get it. Just email me if you really like the show, and I'll send you the same stuff I send to people who give me the $1. We do our best to not be greedy here, but our Patreon is only $1. Our YouTube channel membership is $5, and you get the same crap stuff, high quality content. But on YouTube, you get like a channel member badge and a few other things. I'd appreciate any support that you can give me. Or you can send a PayPal. The instructions for how to do that are in the description of the video. So, yeah, praise the cash, bitches. And it's important to remind you that our next show, live show, will be tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Like always, we'll be live 9 p.m. Eastern from now until infinity if this works out. And please do come and see our next live show. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos on your social media. That really does help. And one other thing that helps, I've been told, is if you come here and watch one more. For some reason, YouTube thinks that means we make good content, and they crank up the recommends for some of our older videos. So that could certainly help us. Maybe not tonight, but tomorrow, while you're working, while you're playing, while you're cleaning your house, while you're watching your kids, whatever you're doing, put on another show. It really does help. We'll be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I hope that all of you will be here with me. So what else can I say? That's what we got for you for tonight. Oh, Tales of the Sonic Voyage. I almost missed. Tales of the Sonic Voyage with the kind and generous $5 super chat. And thanks for being a member. That's 3 tonight. He's the MVP of super chats tonight. Thank you for your kindness. Says Ban. Last hammer of the night. And yes, we'll do the last praise the cash of the night. That is just for you. The MVP of praising the cash tonight. The Tales of the Sonic Voyage, and all of you. Thanks to all of you. We appreciate it. Praise the cash, bitches.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Hey, you know what? Tales of the Sonic Voyage, it must have been a telepathic psychic communication, because I was just about to do the wrap up and say, good night, God bless you all. And I went, wait, let me make sure. Let me check one more time that there isn't another super chat, because I hate it when I hit that ending trailer and I miss one. I hate that because we pride ourselves on reading everyone. Thanks to all of you for your kindness, generosity, and support. I would say thanks to the chat room moderators, but we don't have any no more. Thanks to all you viewers for being there. And it wasn't too bad of a Wild West tonight. We survived another night with no chat room moderators. We'll see how we do tomorrow. By the way, I'll probably be adding them back, but I have to think about that. So what can I say, friends? That's all I got. We'll be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We may have a very special guest. I'll announce it as soon as I've confirmed it. But that's all I got for you for tonight. Please come and visit tomorrow night, 9 p.m. every night this week at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be doing something here, and I hope you'll be here doing that something with us. So that's all I got for you, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night. And
Truthseekers is a viewer-supported show. Wonderful people like you who enjoy this show send pledges in the form of super chats, super stickers, super thanks, PayPal, or Cash App. Instructions for how to help are in the description. You can also join our Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month you can get extra content. Patreon supporters get a backstage pass, early access to all our production videos before they are distributed publicly, Stephen Campion's music, private writings, a monthly show journal, and more. You can also become a YouTube channel member for $5 a month. A YouTube membership includes all of the Patreon benefits, plus a special members badge, priority reply to video comments, and the live chat, plus a monthly members-only video. We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors, for supporting Truth Seekers. Thank you for your generosity and support. Truth Seekers is a viewer-supported show. Now there's a great way to support these broadcasts and show your support. Please be sure and check out our merchandise store. Links to our 2 merchandise online stores are in the links to this video or podcast. The Amazon storefront ships super quickly in the United States, Great Britain, and in many more places. Amazon may not ship to your country or location. If that's the case, hit our second merchandise link in the description and visit our Redbubble storefront. Merchandise from our Redbubble storefront ships worldwide, but may take longer than Amazon. We've got a great deal of super high quality merchandise for you to choose from, including t-shirts, phone cases, sweatshirts, and even pillows. The feedback from our products have been overwhelmingly great. Quality products and fast shipping. People all over the world are buying some merchandise and showing their support of the show. Praise the cash! Praise the cash! Praise the cash! We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors, who are buying some merchandise and helping us to continue this journey. Thanks for being here. This is Truth Seekers with your host, Stephen Campion. Please rate, like and comment on our videos or podcasts. If you are listening to an audio podcast, please rate us 5 stars to help us rise in the search rankings. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to an audio podcast, we love and appreciate you listeners, but you are missing the live tapings. All our shows are recorded live with video feed. We'd love you to come be a part of our live broadcasts and tapings for the podcast. Head on over to YouTube, click the search tool, the little magnifying glass, put Truth Seekers, one word in the search bar, and hit enter. You'll see a strange and mysterious guy with sunglasses. That means you found the channel. Go there, smash the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to receive up-to-date info on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to be a part of our live taping and our chat room during the live broadcasts. Seek the truth. Speak the truth. This is Truth Seekers. Truth Seekers.